Hey guys, tonight, let us leave behind the familiar modern world, step away from the cold glow of LED lights and the synthetic sense of everyday life, to embark on a journey that is gentle, yet utterly enchanting. Together, we'll wander through misty alleyways softly lit by the shimmering lanterns of Edo period Japan. The night air is thick with the fragrance of cherry blossoms, drifting lightly on the breeze, blending with the old scent of incense, the silky notes of camellia oil, and the delicate powder of traditional makeup, like whispered secrets exchanged between shadowy figures passing by. So, before we step deeper into this fragrant realm, if you feel this story is worth a few minutes of your life, please hit like and subscribe. Your support is what keeps me motivated to uncover and share these often overlooked shadows of history, and whether you're listening from a cozy room or a faraway street corner, leave a comment with your location and the time. I always want to know, who am I telling this story to, and where in the world are you? Now then, dim the lights. Turn on a fan if you enjoy the sound of wind rustling through the trees. Close your eyes for a moment, if you wish, but don't inhale too deeply, because we are about to step into an era where scent is more than just a sensation, it is a part of survival itself. You walk slowly, each step hushed and deliberate. Your path is narrow, flanked by rows of sliding paper doors and faded silk curtains that barely stir as you move past them. Overhead, the light from the lanterns glows soft and warm, their red and gold paper gently rippling in the air. Beneath your feet, the low clack of wooden geta sandals echoes faintly against polished wooden floors, intermingled with the distant, honeyed laughter of clients who have long since had too much sake. At first glance, the entire scene looks dreamy, like an ukiyo-e woodblock print come to life. It has that delicate stillness that tricks the eye into thinking nothing could be wrong here. The flutter of robes, the graceful turns of the wrist, the melodic rise and fall of practiced laughter, it all feels timeless, untouchable. But don't let yourself sink into comfort just yet, because you're about to enter the world of the courtesan. And not the kind of courtesan you might imagine from romantic paintings or pretty dance performances. This isn't the fantasy of flower fans and gentle haiku. This is the life of a girl who signs her name to a 10-year contract before she's even finished growing. A girl who learns, sometimes in a matter of weeks, how to smile the exact way that earns the highest price from the highest bidder. She might bring in more in a single evening than a rice farmer could hope for in 12 months of sweat. But she also can't cough at the wrong time, laugh too loudly, or, heaven forbid, sneeze in the presence of a client without being fined, and if you think an unexpected pregnancy is just a plot twist or a touching moment of vulnerability in this story, you're in for a hard truth. You probably wouldn't survive a single week here, not with a real body, not with real needs. You begin at the edge of Yoshiwara. It's the most famous red light district in Old Edo, which you now know as Tokyo. A self-contained pleasure quarter, surrounded by tall wooden walls that isolate it from the rest of the city. Technically, it's illegal for you to be here. Only registered clients, contracted workers, and authorized personnel are allowed past the gates. But you're not any of those. You're something quieter. A drifting presence. A curious observer in wooden sandals, sliding silently through time, passing between rooms and centuries like smoke. Inside these walls, very little is what it seems. The laughter, the affection, the warmth, they're all practiced. They're all rehearsed. Even the names the women go by are performances in themselves. Courtesans don't just use aliases. They adopt stage names chosen for their beauty, their mystery, their poetic ring. Names like Blossom Moon or Evening Haze. Names that shimmer like silk but serve a clear purpose, to build distance between the role they play and the person underneath. That separation isn't just emotional. It becomes a matter of survival, especially when the body begins to betray the illusion. Like, say, by growing a child that no one asked for, the contracts are painfully clear. When you sign your name to the house, you sign over everything. Your earnings, your body, your choices. Even the food you eat and the fabric of your underrobe are considered debts you must work to repay. Pregnancy is not part of the equation. If you find yourself with child, and the house doesn't approve or know who the father is, there are consequences. Not quiet ones. The punishment can be financial, it can be physical, or it can be a total expulsion. And most of the time, there is no one to appeal to, no gentle reprieve. Just a closed door, yet not every courtesan leads a life of despair. Some carve out moments of joy, however fleeting. Some are known for their wit, their storytelling. Their ability to weave a spell around a client without ever touching them. Some gain admirers who return faithfully, not just for beauty, but for companionship. Friendships can blossom even within the strict silken hierarchy. But the rules are always there, looming quietly. The house must maintain the illusion. You must always appear desirable, healthy, available. Pregnancy doesn't just complicate that story, it destroys it completely. So the brothel develops a system. Nothing too obvious, but effective. Surveillance, often unofficial, always present. Senior courtesans keep tabs on the younger ones. Surprise inspections happen. If a girl looks pale or distracted, if a customer whispers that she seemed unwell, she's summoned. Questioned. Observed. Even small signs, like morning nausea or skipped meals, don't go unnoticed. In a place where the walls are made of paper, secrets don't last long. Scholars today still debate how rigidly these policies were applied. Some argue that the elite courtesans, the oiran, had privileges, private lovers, even secret children. Others insist that any deviation from the contract was swiftly punished. No matter the girl's rank. What remains uncontested is the larger truth: the entire structure was never meant to support real life. It was built to sell fantasy. And in fantasies, no one gets morning sickness. Still, the women were not helpless. From the moment you begin your training, you learn to read the room. You learn to notice who holds power, and how to approach them. You master the timing of a glance, the weight of a pause, the subtle pivot of silence. And that same skill sharpens the moment you suspect something has changed inside your body, because this isn't the modern world. There's no clinic tucked behind a side street. No hotline you can call at night. You rely instead on whispers traded over bathwater. On recipes passed in code, on paper packets of bitter herbs hidden inside sleeves. Some of them work. Some of them don't. And some are dangerous enough that we'll need a moment to talk about them later. You slip now through a dormitory, low and warm and lit only by lanterns. Girls sit together, rubbing their tired feet, the fabric of their heavy 10-pound kimonos finally loosened. One laughs softly at a client's awful poetry. Another coughs and quietly cinches her belt tighter across her stomach. It's all part of the routine. Beneath the laughter, beneath the powder and paint, there is always calculation. The body must be managed. Always. Here's a strange little detail most people overlook: in many brothels, there were unofficial period watchers. Yes, seriously. A middle-tier attendant, often older, often quiet, would note how often each girl requested cloth pads. Not out of concern. Not to help. But because the house couldn't afford to be caught off guard. If your request suddenly stopped, someone would notice. And then someone would start asking questions. That's the place where tonight's story truly begins. Beneath the silks. Behind the smiles. Past the flickering lanterns and within the walls no one was supposed to see. We are not just here to learn how courtesans avoided, concealed, or endured pregnancy. We're here to understand how they did it while still smiling, still performing, still surviving inside a world that pretended their real bodies didn't exist at all. You pause at a narrow doorway. From the other side, you hear the sound of quiet retching. A pair of footsteps moves away quickly. Someone is trying not to be seen. The night goes on. And so do you. You are woken, not by any sudden sound, but by silence. Not the peaceful kind of silence that soothes and calms, but the heavy, aching kind that seems to seep slowly into every corner of a room like damp smoke curling around your limbs. The kind of silence that settles when everyone in the house is trying far too hard to pretend that nothing is wrong. It hums quietly beneath the floorboards and hides just behind the walls, like a secret being passed from one breath to the next, a truth no one dares to speak aloud. You pull yourself upright carefully, sensing the weight of unease in the air before you even begin to move. You step lightly down a narrow, dimly lit hallway, where the air remains thick with the lingering scent of incense burned the day before. The fragrance clings stubbornly to the wooden panels, wrapping itself around the walls like a stubborn memory, mixing with the faint odors of sweat, oil, and the mustiness of old tatami mats pressed tightly beneath your feet. Near the end of this corridor, you stop just short of a lacquered folding screen standing silently in the shadows. Beyond it, two girls are crouched low, whispering rapidly and quietly between themselves. One of them presses her back against the wall, her eyes darting nervously toward the darker corners, as if expecting something to emerge. The other grips a small pouch pressed tightly against the inside of her sleeve, her pale fingers visibly strained from holding it so tightly. You do not need to see inside to know what it contains. This is not perfume or a trinket. It is medicine. Or at least, something trying desperately to pass for medicine. The harsh truth is that the moment you are signed into a brothel, whether this happens with your consent or without it, whether your parents handed you over, you were tricked, sold, or simply had no better option left, your body ceases to belong to you in any full or meaningful way. Your breath, your time, your touch, even the way you walk, all of it becomes property of the house. You now live according to the rules of a strict hierarchy that begins and ends with profit. You belong to the madam who runs the house, to the house itself, and to the clients who pay for your presence. Your contract, whether written or unspoken, made clear through glances and enforced by coin, is unmistakable: pregnancy is a violation. No belly swelling. No missed duties. No whispered confessions behind paper-thin walls. There is no room here for accidents. If you become pregnant, the brothel does not see it as an unfortunate mishap. They see it as a failure. And you, the girl, become the one held responsible. In Edo period Japan, courtesans had no access to anything resembling reliable contraception. Their choices were painfully limited, their risks constant and ever-present. So what did they do? You begin to trace the map of quiet desperation, where tricks and tinctures take the place of science, and ancient recipes are passed from girl to girl like sacred knowledge, carried in silence and shadow. There is a tea made from tsubaki leaves. The camellia plant. It is bitter on the tongue, with a floral sting that lingers deep in the throat. It is said to close the womb, a phrase that sounds poetic until you realize how little actual evidence supports this claim. In reality, it is probably more diuretic than anything else. But still, the girls drink it as if it holds salvation. Each cup is swallowed with the hope that it might bend fate just a little more in their favor. Then there is the infamous moon tea. The very name feels like a whispered spell. It is shared quietly from futon to futon, often with a half smile and a half prayer. You hear the phrase repeated again and again: bring it back. As if a missing period were a thing lost somewhere in the woods, waiting to be found and returned. The ingredients vary from house to house, but often include mugwort, pennyroyal, and thin shavings of copper scraped carefully from coins. Sometimes cloves are added for taste, although the brew is rarely drinkable. The tea is taken at night, curled beneath thin blankets, lying perfectly still as if the stillness itself might help. And in the morning, the girls pray. Not to the gods, but to their own bodies. They wait for the blood. They wait for freedom. Historians still debate whether such herbal brews were mainly used in remote rural villages or widely within the red light districts themselves. But one fact remains undeniable: documented records show that courtesans developed high levels of herbal knowledge. It was a matter of survival. Knowing what to drink, when to drink it, and what to avoid mixing could mean the difference between returning to work the next day or being cast out onto the cold streets. Some girls resorted to even riskier methods. Certain roots, when chewed raw, were said to cause violent cramping. Others inserted small slivers of ginger deep into their bodies, hoping to provoke enough irritation to flush out what was not supposed to be there. Some wrapped smooth stones in thick cloth, heated them until they were nearly scalding, and pressed them firmly against their bellies until their skin reddened and the pain distracted them from everything else. It was a mixture of heat, hope, and desperation, often accompanied by whispered prayers or silent tears. You overhear a conversation near the stairwell. A senior courtesan, poised and composed despite the tension, hands a small paper-wrapped bundle to a trembling junior. Her hands do not shake, but her eyes speak volumes. "Take this," she says softly. "But only after a hot bath. And only if you have not eaten yet." She looks the girl directly in the eyes. "Do not cry. That only makes it worse." And then she is gone, already walking away as though she has said too much. Nothing about this process is ever consistent or reliable. What seems to work for one girl fails miserably for another. And the side effects, dizziness, nausea, fever, bleeding, are often almost as terrifying as the problem itself. Yet still, many take the risk. Because for most, the alternative is far worse. Once the madam finds out, everything changes. You pass a room with the door slightly ajar. Inside, a girl lies flat on a futon, her hair tangled and loose around her shoulders. Beside her, a basin filled with water sits dark and still, tinged with a coppery red. An older woman kneels gently at her side, rubbing her back in slow, comforting circles. She hums something soft and low, perhaps a lullaby from long ago, maybe something she once heard when she was in the same position, praying not to be discovered. You realize then that in Yoshiwara, nothing ever truly disappears. It just recycles itself. Different girls. Same fear, same pain, even when the worst is avoided, the damage lingers. You see it in the slight shuffle of a girl's step the next morning. In the stiffness of her movements. In the hollow quality of her laughter when a client cracks a joke that she does not find funny. But there is no time to rest. The house does not grant sick leave. If you can breathe, you must work. Some brothels, especially those of the mid-tier level, had secret loopholes. If a girl had enough money, often an impossible sum, she might be allowed leave under the pretense of recovering from illness. The madam might turn a blind eye. But this option was available only to the fortunate few who earned enough and had the favor of the house. Most girls had neither, and then there is the contradiction that weaves through everything here like a hidden thread. The house wants you to be beautiful, alluring, and sensual, everything that suggests fertility. But you must never actually reproduce. Your allure must be fertile, your body must not be. You are meant to perform romance, to simulate connection. To make a man believe he has touched something real. But you are never allowed to live within that illusion yourself. Some girls began faking their moon cycles. They stained cloth pads with beet juice or powdered red clay. They feigned cramps when they knew the madam's assistant was nearby. One girl even tied a blood-soaked pouch to her thigh and accidentally let it slip from her kimono while handing in laundry. It sounds dramatic. It was. But it worked. When every slip risks punishment, performance becomes your second skin. You learn to fake delight, exhaustion, and innocence. You learn to smile while panic burns quietly inside. You learn to survive by mimicry. You start to see the pattern. A loop, a cycle within a cycle. Every month, the same anxious waiting. The same measuring of days. The same bitter tea. The same private wondering. And when the bleeding does not come, the first few days are filled with hope. Maybe it is stress. Maybe the tea has not yet worked. But slowly, fear creeps in. It always does. Even the madams, for all their cruelty, have their own calculations. If a top-earning girl starts showing symptoms, sometimes the punishment softens. A doctor may be called secretly. A trip outside the city may be arranged under a fabricated excuse. But if you are not a valuable asset, if your name does not command silver, you are replaceable. You vanish, you overhear another whisper late at night. A girl confides in her friend. They say she ran away, she murmurs. But she did not take her comb. Not even her shoes. That silence again. The kind that means everyone knows better than to ask too many questions. Later, you catch your reflection in a mirror left hanging near the back stairs. It is not your own face you see, but the shadow of a body that could have been any of theirs. And suddenly, it hits you, how fragile the line is between being here and not. Between being seen and erased. Outside, the night air smells of sweet rice wine and smoldering pine ash. Somewhere down the corridor, a client's laugh rings out, too loud and too long. Somewhere else, behind a closed door, a girl swallows something bitter and hopes to see red by morning. You do not stop walking. You keep moving. You keep listening. Because here, stories do not end. They simply shift from voice to voice. You wake the next day in the very belly of the district, in the place where everything is too much. Too much color. Too many rules. Too many eyes pretending not to see. There's no sunlight in these inner chambers, only a dim, persistent candlelight bouncing off silk-covered screens and painted panels. The scent in the air is layered, faint perfume buried beneath damp tatami, old wood, and last night's smoke. The world feels slow, padded by haze, like you're floating in the middle of someone else's dream. Outside the rooms, courtesans move through their morning routines, already preparing for another night of smiling, bowing, laughing on cue. You pass by girls who hum while powdering their faces and others who recite poems in mirrors as if practicing spells. But your attention doesn't linger on them, your eyes are drawn to a small, quiet detail, a pair of slippers, left neatly side by side just outside a closed paper door. Too neatly. Slippers that haven't moved since last night. Inside that room, behind that door, a girl no older than 16 lies curled on her side, facing the wall. Her hair fans out across her pillow like spilled ink. She hasn't shifted in hours. Her kimono is loose around her waist, the ties unknotted. Beside her lies a chipped ceramic cup, half filled with a dark liquid gone cold. The rim is stained with the mark of her lips. She drank the mixture last night, a boiled concoction of bark, dried leaves, and something bitter that even she couldn't identify. She drank it slowly, like it might grant her a future. But she still isn't bleeding. As the hours pass, you start noticing patterns, small repetitions disguised as coincidence. You see the same herb vendors returning, always at odd hours, always lingering near bathhouses and garden gates. You watch them pass discreet bundles into waiting sleeves, exchange hurried nods with women whose faces show more tension than thanks. The same bitter smell floats from personal teapots in private quarters, drifting under the doorways. You begin to learn the names behind the mystery. Ninjin for strength. Saninso for internal cleansing. Shokyo for pain. Ginseng, sage, ginger. Each with a purpose. Each with a promise they might not keep, but not everything used in this hidden world comes from plants. You hear low murmurs about stranger remedies, mineral mixtures crushed by hand in back rooms, powders scraped from the faded paint of temple walls or gathered from the ash of ceremonial fires. These substances are ground fine, mixed with water, and swallowed in silence. One girl claims boiling crushed pearls with vinegar will force her body to respond. Another insists iron shavings left overnight in tea give the mixture a necessary weight. Their faces remain unreadable. There's no glee in these remedies. Just calculation. The strangest thing of all is the language. These potions and rituals are meant to do one specific thing, to end something before it becomes something larger, louder. Irreversible. Yet no one says the word baby. Not aloud. Not even in whispers. The phrases are careful, as if saying too much might make it real. I need to reset my moon. I've got weight in the belly. I need to clear it out. Soft euphemisms cloaked in metaphor, designed to distance the speaker from the truth growing quietly inside her. You begin hearing about the Anahari, female acupuncturists who visit without announcement and leave without acknowledgement. They are not midwives, and they are not there to comfort. Their role is precise, clinical, nearly invisible. They work on aligning the body's inner energy, its chi, to push it gently but firmly out of imbalance. Their version of healing is disruption. A few swift needles below the navel. Firm pressure applied to the inner thighs. A sliver of heat focused on the lower back. No incense, no prayer beads, no explanation. Just touch and technique. Just business. Historians continue to debate how widespread such practices were. Some argue that these were urban legends, whispered exaggerations. Others believe they were so deeply woven into everyday life that they escaped the written record entirely. The truth is likely buried somewhere in between, layered beneath decades of silence and fear. Another method you learn about is moxibustion, known simply as moxa. A traditional treatment, it involves burning small cones of dried mugwort directly on or just above the skin. In temples and clinics, it's used for sore joints or poor circulation. But here, its purpose narrows. The heat is focused low, near the womb, applied with quiet urgency. The goal is not healing, but provocation. You see a girl undergoing this process in a dim room. She sits perfectly still. Her sleeves rolled high, her skin pinking beneath the flickering heat. She bites her inner sleeve, silent, her body tense but unmoving. The room smells like burnt hay mixed with old sweat and something sour beneath it. The smoke rises slowly, curling toward the ceiling like a ghost escaping a body. She doesn't cry. She just breathes through her nose and watches the spiral of smoke as if it holds an answer. Of course, none of these methods offer guarantees. Sometimes they bring relief. Sometimes they do nothing at all. And sometimes they leave damage that never fully heals. You overhear two women talking behind a screen. They mention a girl who can no longer walk straight after too many moxa sessions. She shuffles now, one says, voice low. Like an old crone dragging her youth behind her. Yet the search for solutions never stops. There's always another trick. Another rumor. One of the stranger ones involves climbing a tree and jumping down repeatedly. The goal is not to break bones, but to shake the body hard enough to release what it's holding. Not high enough to kill. Just high enough to jolt. You see a girl no older than 15 behind a tea shop, her hair tied tight, her eyes set in determination. She takes a breath and climbs, knees scraped and bare. You want to stop her. To say something. But then you remember, you are only a witness here. A shadow with no voice. You can only watch. Some courtesans turn toward ritual. You learn about misogi, a purification rite usually performed by priests before entering sacred spaces. A few women have adapted it into something of their own. They wade into cold rivers, sometimes before dawn, whispering their prayers into the current. Their hands rest flat against their stomachs as they chant softly, not to find peace, but to ask their bodies to forget. You imagine them there, teeth chattering, breath steaming in the early air, bargaining with gods who never answer. Other methods are less visible. Some simply stop eating. Not from vanity, but from the belief that a weakened body will stop producing anything extra. That it will abandon any new life growing within it. You walk past a girl who hasn't eaten in 3 days. Her face is all angles now. Her lips dry. She can barely lift her head. But when her name is called, she still reaches for her rouge. She still draws the faintest line of red across her mouth. She still becomes the fantasy. The deeper you look, the more you begin to understand how tightly the business and the body are intertwined. Everything depends on illusion. Clients pay for vitality, for freshness, for a woman who looks untouched by pain. A pregnancy, even one that ends early and quietly, leaves behind shadows. Slower steps. Duller skin. A voice that trembles instead of charms. And that means fewer clients. Which means less income. Which means more debt. Desperation multiplies. There is a saying in some houses, passed down with little sympathy. Better to lose one girl than 1 month's earnings. It sounds brutal. Because it is. But it makes clear why everything here runs on silence. On discretion. On self-reliance. No one is coming to rescue you. You have to rescue yourself. You watch a senior courtesan teaching a new girl how to wrap her belly. Not for beauty. Not for posture. But for concealment. Cloth wound tight in careful layers. Pulling the midsection flat. Breathe shallow, she instructs, pulling the ties snug. Move slowly. And never eat too much in front of clients. They'll start to wonder if you're growing. Some girls get creative. One blamed her swelling stomach on mizubucure, retaining water. Another claimed to be infected with a rare stomach parasite. One even convinced a sympathetic client that she was taking fertility herbs to help her married sister conceive. The man wept with gratitude and gave her double the usual fee. The jokes begin to surface too. Not because anything is funny, but because laughter is sometimes the only thing left. One girl jokes that if she drinks any more mugwort, she'll start sprouting leaves. Another says her next stomachache will be named taro if it sticks around. The laughter echoes against the walls. It's soft. It's short. But it helps, and you, wandering in the gaps between rooms, begin to sense how intricate this network really is. A complex web of knowledge, superstition, rumor, and raw willpower. All of it devoted to one quiet goal, to remain unpregnant. Or at the very least, to remain unseen. The candles flicker as someone walks past, the hem of her robe brushing the wood. She hums a tune with no words, no melody, just rhythm. The scent of burnt mugwort still clings to the air like smoke that doesn't know how to leave. And the girl who drank the tea last night? She is bleeding now. Her hands tremble. Her eyes are glassy. She won't smile today. But she will dress. She will bow. She will work tonight. Because in this place, that is what survival looks like. You wake slowly to the faint sound of fabric being pulled tight somewhere in the room. There is a soft grunt coming from the shadows, the strained and almost desperate exhale of someone who has been holding her breath far too long. Then, the final tug comes, a sash drawn mercilessly snug across the ribs, tightening with precise force. The wooden floor beneath your feet creaks ever so slightly as you turn your head toward the source of the sound. Across the room, illuminated faintly by the pale moonlight filtering through the window, a courtesan stands in front of a polished bronze mirror. Her body is wrapped in a delicate interplay of light and tension. She is carefully winding strip after strip of coarse linen around her midsection with the practiced precision of someone who has done this ritual many times before. This act is not about vanity or preparing to enchant a client with an enhanced figure. No, it is something far more secretive. She is hiding something. And she is learning, perhaps with growing skill and quiet desperation, how to hide it well. Welcome to the secret art of the belly binder. This practice is one of the oldest and quietest tricks found in the Yoshiwara Survival Handbook. When bitter herbal teas have failed to ease the symptoms, when the various roots and potions do not work their magic, when the dreaded moon has gone missing and each passing day drags forward laden with silent dread, there remains one steadfast option. There is still the binder. Always the binder. Courtesans are taught carefully how to wrap themselves tightly enough to flatten any swelling beneath their robes, but not so tight as to completely restrict their breathing. Just tight enough to pass unnoticed. Just tight enough to survive one more inspection from a client, one more long and difficult night. You step closer, drawn to the quiet ritual unfolding before you. In that moment, you almost feel the invisible pressure pressing against your own ribs as though the linen were being wound tightly around your body as well. The cloth feels coarse against the skin, but it has been folded and layered with great care, handled by hands shaped by practice and necessity. Silk cords hold the wrapping firmly in place, knots tied as tightly as the secrets these women carry. There is no softness or comfort in this fabric embrace. There is only containment. Compress the body. Flatten the truth. Carry it hidden beneath the elaborate costume. Historians continue to debate the origins of this practice. Some suggest it descended from old folk medicine, a technique used by women to close the body after childbirth. Others believe it has roots in the tight wrappings worn beneath samurai armor, a way of preparing the body for battle. Perhaps the tradition began even earlier, among midwives, dancers, or shrine maidens. But here, in the brothel, the purpose is unmistakably clear. This is no longer about healing or strength. This is about concealment and survival. The girl whispers quietly to herself as she works, her voice barely louder than the soft creak of the floorboards beneath her feet. You cannot catch every word, but the rhythm of the phrase is familiar, a kind of prayer, a private mantra that she repeats to steady herself. One more day. One more night, one more smile. When the final knot is tied and secured, she slips into an outer robe. The robe is floral and flowing, but it has been chosen not for its beauty. Instead, its design is deliberate, drawing the eye along a curve of petals and cranes. This carefully chosen pattern directs attention upward, away from the belly. She adds a scarf as well, subtle and soft. Not too loose, not too bold. Just enough to gently shift the gaze. You follow her footsteps downstairs, noting the careful elegance in her walk. Her back is straight, her steps measured and controlled, each movement executed with the poise of someone who is painfully aware she is being watched. You imagine the ache in her spine beneath the weight of the pressure wrapped around her torso, though you would never know it just by looking. The other girls notice, of course. Everyone sees. Yet in this world, pretending not to notice is often the kindest thing a person can do. The binding is not merely a physical act. It is psychological. You begin to understand the heavy toll it takes to smile when the body is quietly suffocating beneath layers of cloth and illusion. Every gesture must seem effortless. Every glance must sparkle with charm. Clients pay to believe in ease, in grace, in perfection. They do not want to be reminded of what lies beneath the silk. In some brothels, there are women hired specifically to assist with dressing. Officially, they are attendants. Unofficially, they are masters of illusion. These dressers specialize in concealment techniques, what they call silhouetting. You overhear one of them speaking softly to a companion. "She's 3 months, maybe 4, she says in a low voice. But I got her through the last 2 rounds." Her tone carries a hint of pride, as if boasting about a game well played, even though the stakes involve more than just winning. They are about flesh and futures. Then there is the obi, the wide, decorative sash traditionally tied around the waist. Here, it becomes something far more than an accessory. It transforms into a tool. A shield. A weapon. A well-placed obi can distort the outline of a swelling stomach. One girl ties hers higher than tradition dictates, altering the curve of her silhouette just enough to throw off suspicion. Another selects a pattern with a bold fan motif that pulls the viewer's gaze outward rather than downward. This is an ancient art, a secret skill of visual misdirection perfected quietly over generations. You pass by a dressing room where a younger girl is being coached by an elder woman. Don't lean back too far. The elder instructs gently. It makes the belly too obvious. If he touches you there, laugh it off. Shift his hand. Distract him. The younger girl nods nervously, trembling as her fingers fumble with the cords. The older woman sighs softly and takes over, her hands moving swiftly and efficiently, pulling the wrap firm and even. Her eyes remain focused, her expression unreadable and resolute. Soon, these rituals become routine. One courtesan tightens her sash after every meal, almost instinctively. Another skips food entirely, smiling weakly and saying she doesn't feel like eating tonight. A third adjusts her binder mid-conversation with a client, casually brushing her waist with the air of someone smoothing a wrinkle in her robe.
One girl half jokes to the others, "If I can't breathe, I probably look stunning." The others laugh quietly, but their eyes betray a deep and tired weariness. Of course, the body eventually rebels. The consequences creep in slowly, almost invisibly. Some develop deep bruises along their ribs, hidden beneath cosmetics and silence. Others suffer numbness in their legs, the result of poor circulation and constant compression. You notice one girl limping slightly after a long evening. When asked, she shrugs and says she must have sat too long. But you know better. You have seen the way she winces when the room is empty. There is a chilling belief passed among the girls, almost like folklore. Bind early. Bind tight. Bind hard. And maybe the problem will resolve itself. No herbs. No prayers. No climbing mountains or seeking miracles. Just sheer force. Applied daily. Some say it works. Others say it never does. No one agrees. And no one has the time to wait for certainty. One day, you find yourself in the laundry room, watching a seamstress at work. She is reinforcing the seams of a set of undergarments with tiny weights sewn carefully into the lining. Just enough to pull the fabric straight. Just enough to keep everything in place. She hums softly to herself, a lullaby from some forgotten village far away. You wonder if she truly understands what she is making. Or if she chooses not to ask questions. Later that night, you witness something quieter, more private, something that does not seek attention or pity. A courtesan stands alone in her room, slowly unwrapping herself in the flickering glow of a small lantern. The fabric falls away layer by layer. When the final tie loosens and the cloth slips free, you see the deep red indentation left around her midsection. It is not simply a mark on the skin. It is a wound born of routine and necessity. She gazes at it in the mirror. She does not touch it. She does not cry. She simply looks away, as if accepting the weight of the pain silently. That is the moment it clicks in your mind. This practice is not only about concealing a pregnancy. It is about command. About forcing the body to obey the performance demanded of it. Because in this world, the costume must hold. The illusion must hold. And the illusion always begins with the flesh. You begin to notice the small, private rituals that precede the binding each day. Some girls meditate, eyes closed, breaths long and shallow, centering themselves. Some speak quietly to their reflections, as if bracing for battle. One girl brushes her hair 100 times before wrapping, counting under her breath as if each stroke grants a little control over the chaos. These rituals do not erase the fear. But they give it form. And when you live in fear every hour, having form becomes a kind of strength. You pause by an open window, catching a faint trace of music drifting in the distance. The warm drums of a festival float over the walls, inviting and full of life. For just a moment, you imagine a world where these women could live freely. A world where fabric is not worn as armor. Where laughter is real and unguarded. Where a changing body is not a danger but a blessing. The music fades, and the heavy weight of the district returns around you. The same girl you saw that morning passes by again now. Her obi is tied high, her robe arranged just so, her hair adorned with fresh blossoms that still glisten from the comb's touch. She looks radiant. Impossibly composed. No one would ever guess what she carries beneath the folds of cloth. Not her dresser, not her client, who greets her with a low bow and a pouch heavy with coins. They vanish together behind a curtain, his voice cheerful, hers carefully rehearsed. You remain behind, still and silent, in the dim hallway. Nearby lies a strip of cloth, still warm from her body, folded with care and left behind like a quiet, invisible testament to the weight she bears. It is midnight now. The hour when the streets outside fall into deep quiet and stillness, and the world inside the brothel begins to exhale, shifting from its lively facade to something more secret, more subdued. The candles burn low, their wicks barely glowing, buried deep within pools of molten wax. Their flickering light casts restless shadows that dance slowly across the delicate rice paper walls, blurring the edges of the room and giving everything a softened, almost dreamlike quality. You follow the scent hanging in the air, a sharp and complicated blend of herbal bitterness, singed leaves, and something faintly sour beneath it all, a smell that curls and winds through the hallway like an invisible thread drawing you closer. You walk forward, your footsteps soft and careful, until you reach a narrow, unmarked corridor tucked away near the back of the house. This hallway is never part of any brothel tour. Guests do not wander here. There is no fanfare or laughter echoing through these walls. Only quiet doors and an air that feels heavier, thicker, almost charged. You step carefully through a low threshold and enter a small chamber where the scent deepens and thickens, wrapping tightly around your nose and settling against your chest like a heavy cloak. Smoke curls lazily through the dim light, clinging to the wooden beams overhead like moss growing in a shadowed forest. The room is hazy, the candlelight turning golden and gray as it struggles to penetrate the mist. This is a space not meant for show or spectacle. This is a room built for secrecy. This is where the other methods begin. The ones that are never mentioned in official records or celebrated in poems. The ones you will never find written in elegant prints or charming anecdotes. These are whispered from girl to girl, never spoken above a hush, never acknowledged during the day's bright hours. Behind these closed doors, knowledge moves differently. Smoke and needles. Herbs and sweat. Remedies woven from desperation and passed down like coded messages through generations of trembling hands. The woman who tends this room is not a courtesan. She is not a madam. Her face is folded with age, her skin like creased silk, soft yet marked by time. Her eyes are hooded beneath heavy lids that seem to hold secrets themselves. Her fingers are yellowed at the tips, stained from years of handling tea leaves, resin, and ash. Everyone calls her Obasan. Not grandmother, in the gentle, loving way. It is more a role than a name, a position earned through time, experience, and unspoken trust. She speaks rarely, but when she does, every word carries weight, dropping into the room like stones in still water. The girls listen to her with the same attention sailors give to the shifting winds. You watch quietly as she prepares a slender pipe, holding it carefully over the small flame of a squat candle. She is not packing it with tobacco. The dried mixture she uses has a darker, sharper aroma, something pungent, unfamiliar. She lights it slowly, and the smoke that rises is anything but ordinary. It drifts upward in ribbons of blue-gray, twisting and curling like a ghost struggling to escape the confines of the room. The girl sitting beside her inhales the smoke with careful discipline, her jaw tight, hands pressed against her stomach as if trying to keep something inside from slipping free. Someone murmurs the word kusuriaki. You are told that it is a form of medicinal fumigation. The smoke is believed to travel through the body, unblocking what should flow freely, correcting what has gone wrong inside. Put simply, it is a remedy meant to chase out what is not wanted. A polite phrase for an impolite truth. Some swear it works. Others say it causes nothing but nausea and strange dreams. But when the stakes are this high, side effects are little more than background noise. Next to them sits a lacquered case no larger than a sewing box. When opened, it reveals rows of acupuncture needles, delicate, slender tools made of bone or bronze, each wrapped in its own carefully folded cloth. Obasan selects one with deliberate care. Examines the tip closely beneath the candle's flame, then presses it gently into the flesh just below the girl's navel. The girl does not flinch. Not even a blink. She has been here before. You can tell by the stillness in her limbs, by the quiet rhythm of her breath held deep and slow. Outside this room, scholars continue to debate how traditional Japanese medicine shaped the way pregnancies were managed long ago. Some argue that practices like this were central, passed down from bathhouse midwives and shrine priestesses. Others insist these rituals were fringe, more folklore than fact. But here, in this thick, smoky air, those academic debates lose all meaning. What matters in this room is not whether it is scientific. What matters is that it might work. That it might offer an answer, even if that answer is cruel. You drift toward another corner where bundles of dried plants hang suspended from the ceiling like sleeping bats. They cast delicate shadows on the floor below, swaying slowly with every subtle shift of the air. There is mugwort again, known as yamogi, its crumbled leaves giving off a familiar grassy bitterness. But you also see stranger things. Gnarled roots twisted like crooked fingers. Red berries shriveled nearly to dust. A full pomegranate, uncut, tied with red string and hung carefully from the beam. Some girls believe it protects them. Others believe it absorbs guilt like a sponge, and then there is the salve. You watch as someone mixes it slowly in a small bowl. Ground mustard seed. Burnt ash. Ginger grated until it releases its fire. The result is a thick, hot paste, the color of rust. It is spread carefully across the bare skin of the belly, applied layer by burning layer. The girl receiving the salve flinches sharply, then steadies herself, clenching her fists tightly. She does not scream. But her eyes glisten with moisture, and her teeth press hard into her lower lip. The burn is not punishment. It is hope. A way to force the body into submission. To convince it to undo what it has already begun. There is something brutal about this process. But not in a dramatic or loud way. It is a quiet violence. A smoldering internal war between what the body wants to create and what the mind cannot afford to allow. Flesh trying to grow. Will trying to erase. In a darker corner, you overhear a whispered tale. A girl once paid a traveling apothecary for something called the dragon's tear. No one knows what it really was. Perhaps opium. Perhaps powdered snake fawn. Perhaps mercury or crushed pearl. She swallowed it with plum wine and slipped into a deep sleep that lasted 2 full days. When she finally woke, she was hollow. Something had changed inside her, not just in her womb, but in her mind. Since then, she speaks to no one. She only hums softly, brushing her hair again and again as if trying to rewind time with every stroke. Meanwhile, above this secret chamber, the rest of the house continues undisturbed. Music plays in the main rooms. Guests pour drinks. The women smile and flirt, carrying on the night as usual. But down here, time thickens and slows like dark syrup. The night folds inward on itself. The air smells of fear and root ash. It clings to your clothes and lingers in your skin. You watch as a girl picks up a small carved statue, a bodhisattva worn smooth from constant handling. She whispers to it softly before lifting a bowl of tea so dark it looks like ink. She drinks without expression. Then she pulls her robe around her knees, tucks her hands neatly in her lap, and waits. No prayers. No tears. Just silence and time, yet not everything in this room is bleak. Tucked beneath a futon, you spot a cloth-wrapped book. Someone lifts the cover, revealing pages filled with handwritten notes. Diagrams drawn roughly with charcoal. Remedies annotated with stars and warnings. The script changes every few pages, written by different hands across different years. It is a shared record, a quiet collaboration across time. One girl writes, "Too strong, made me faint." Another adds, "Worked after 2 nights. Use sparingly." There is something almost beautiful about it. Like a diary of survival. Like a secret map, some entries even make you smile. One note reads, "Tried masking the taste with plum wine. Failed spectacularly. Tasted like poison and heartbreak." Another is short and certain. "Never again. I mean it this time." You linger near a girl lying on a straw mat, her hands folded gently over her stomach. Her face is too serene. There is no expression, only stillness. Her eyes are half closed, lost somewhere between now and nowhere. She has taken something strong. Perhaps the hard tea. Perhaps the dragon's tear. Perhaps just exhaustion. Whatever it is, she seems suspended between relief and ruin. A soft bell rings somewhere nearby. It is a gentle chime, bright and high. Not an alarm, but a marker of time. It signals that someone may rise now. That the session is over. That the pain has faded enough for motion to return. That another girl has made it through the night. You notice how easily the unnatural becomes ordinary here. Needles. Smoke. Salves that burn. The rituals sink deeply into the daily rhythm. One girl jokes quietly that she's beginning to enjoy the sting of moxa burns. She calls them campfire kisses, though no one laughs with her. Not because it isn't funny, but because it feels far too real. You step out into the hallway once again. The corridor is silent. Your hair still smells faintly of herbs. Your skin carries the ghost of smoke. And in your mind, phrases repeat themselves, unlabeled jars, muttered recipes. Chants half remembered. No one upstairs knows this place exists. They dance and pour drinks, unaware of the other world lying just beneath their feet. That is when you understand, the brothel has layers. The upper layer sells fantasy, glitter and giggles. The lower layer carries the heavy weight of that illusion. In smoke. In silence. In the tight pull of cloth stretched across bone, behind you, the old door creaks open once again. A new girl enters quietly, her steps small and careful. She does not look at you. She does not need to. She is already part of the pattern. You find yourself walking once more, this time down a narrow, twisting alley that runs quietly behind the brothel. The stones beneath your feet are uneven, worn smooth over countless years by the steady passage of many footsteps. They are slick and slightly cold from the lingering dampness left behind by last night's rain, a soft, persistent moisture that clings to the air and the ground. The faint sound of dripping water echoes gently between the tall, shadowed walls on either side, creating a quiet, almost rhythmic accompaniment to your slow, careful footsteps as you move forward. Near the entrance to a dimly lit kitchen, you notice a small cart parked against the wall. It is not like the delivery carts you might expect. Those loaded with fresh vegetables, fragrant herbs, or crisp linens meant for the brothel. No, this cart is quieter, more discreet, almost secretive in its purpose. It is carefully covered with thick, muted fabric that is folded and tied with such precision that nothing inside is visible, not even to the most casual glance. Curiosity pulls you closer. You lean in gently, just enough to peek beneath the edge of the cloth, careful not to disturb the neat folds. Instead of the expected food or cloth, your eyes fall on stacks of folded letters tied tightly with string, small pouches filled with money wrapped carefully to avoid any sound, and even a small rattle delicately enclosed in thin rice paper. The rattle's faint, muffled sound seems almost secret, as if it is meant to be heard only by those who understand its meaning. This quiet cart belongs to the secret child brokers, the shadowy middlemen of Yoshiwara who are never spoken of openly, yet whose existence everyone knows deep down, hidden in the unseen undercurrents of the district. You begin to follow one of these brokers. Unlike the dark-robed men of legend whispered about in fearful tones, this broker is a woman, probably in her 50s. Her face is calm and composed, marked with fine lines that tell stories of years spent in quiet calculation and careful negotiation. Her steps are soft and ghost-like, as if she moves through the night without disturbing a single breath. Her eyes flicker constantly, scanning every shadowed corner for watchers or threats, alert and cautious. She has not come here to sell anything. Instead, she has come to take something away, something that must vanish without leaving a trace. The brothel does not pay her openly or directly. For that would be far too dangerous. Instead, her compensation arrives in the form of carefully concealed gifts, favors quietly exchanged behind closed doors, or gold discreetly hidden inside tea canisters passed gently to her hands. Her work is delicate and dangerous. She handles things that must disappear. She carries out her tasks with swift precision and absolute silence, never leaving a single record or trace of her movements. You watch as she meets a young courtesan behind the bathhouse. There is no greeting, no bow exchanged between them. Their interaction is wordless and urgent. A small bundle changes hands, folded plainly inside rough cloth. What it contains, you dare not guess. It could be herbs for medicine, fragile instructions written on paper as thin as rice, or simply a name spoken once and never again. Whatever it is, the exchange carries a weight of unspoken meaning, heavy and tangible between them. Some of these brokers maintain quiet connections to remote shrines. Others have ties to foundling homes far beyond the city's reach, places where no questions are asked and no records are kept. A few are linked to rural midwives, women known for their discretion and speed. The madams in the brothel tolerate their presence with silent agreement, so long as they remain unseen and unheard, and as long as the problems disappear before curious clients begin to notice anything unusual. Historians continue to debate the true extent of this shadowy network. Some dismiss it as myth, exaggerated by moralists and reformers eager to scandalize Edo's pleasure quarters. Others point to temple records that list dozens of anonymous infants left at shrines each season. One old account even tells of a woman who transported over 20 babies from Edo to a mountain nunnery, each carefully swaddled and each mother's identity erased without mercy. But not all brokers deal in mercy or kindness. Whispers speak of one broker who demanded outrageous prices: gold, strands of hair, precious family heirlooms. If a girl could not pay, the child might be abandoned at a lonely crossroads or sold to another house far beyond the city's reach. These stories are never told with lanterns burning bright or music filling the air. Instead, they are shared in hushed tones during late-night laundry duty or while soothing aching feet too tired to carry them any longer. Tonight, the girl being helped is barely 17 years old. Her face is blank and unreadable, a mask of forced calm hiding the storm within. Her hands nervously fold and unfold the hem of her robe in a gesture as repetitive and silent as a prayer. She hands over a tiny wrapped parcel along with a small mirror. The mirror is a token, a small piece for her to hold on to, a way to remember something she cannot say aloud. The broker accepts them without a word, turning smoothly and walking back to her waiting cart. She disappears into the fog-filled street like a phantom swallowed by the night. You realize then that some courtesans never learn what happens next. The child is taken away. The debt remains. Life continues as if nothing has changed. The subject is never mentioned again. Others ask questions. They write letters that never get mailed. One girl confides in a trusted companion that she dreams of a boy with her own eyes and his father's crooked smile. She tells herself sometimes that she leaves an extra bowl of rice by the door, then scolds herself for such foolishness. You pass a dressing room where a girl is brushing her hair. She hums softly, tapping the brush rhythmically against the wooden floor. You realize she is counting, not the strokes of the brush, but the days since the child was taken, since the bundle left her hands. You wonder if she waits for a sign, anything to say the child lives, grows, and is remembered somewhere beyond these walls. Not all girls are resigned to silence. One, you hear, escaped just a week after her child was taken. She traveled barefoot for miles until she found the broker's hidden cottage. She demanded to see her baby. The broker allowed her to hold the infant for exactly 1 minute, then coldly told her to leave. If you come back, she warned, I will make you forget. The girl never returned. She stopped speaking altogether. Like the girl who swallowed the dragon's tear. Like so many others before her. Silence seems to be the final, bitter payment, yet even in this shadow world, there are rules. Brokers handling matters for courtesans operate with utmost discretion. Some use false names. Some change their routes weekly to avoid detection. You follow one now, carrying a basket balanced expertly on her arm as she slips quietly into a kitchen alley to meet with a cook. No one notices her. No one suspects her purpose. That is the point of it all. Sometimes, the brokers do not take the child itself. Sometimes they take only the means, the herbs, the concoctions, the carefully planned methods. When it becomes too late to intervene, they step in as midwives at short notice. Stories are whispered of babies born right in garden sheds behind the brothel, wrapped hastily in discarded festival banners to muffle their cries. Some children survive. Some do not. You walk past a small shrine tucked between buildings. Nestled among the stones sit tiny figurines, not gods or protectors, but memorials. Placed by brokers or by the girls themselves for the children who never made it, or for those solved too late. Among the courtesans, a term is spoken quietly. Kage no koi, shadow child. It does not mean ghost. It means the child who existed only in secrecy and vanished without a trace. Not dead. Not alive. Just absent, like a breath drawn in and released without sound. One girl writes haiku for her shadow child. You find the delicate verses tucked away in a drawer, fragile as a whispered hope, folded robe, still warm, your breath in the night's silence, gone before the dawn. You step away, your heart heavy with the weight of what you have seen. Around the corner, you glimpse another broker, different woman, same unreadable expression. She adjusts the shawl around her shoulders, carrying nothing visible, but her eyes hold the burden of countless unspoken stories. She passes you without a word. You feel a chill rise in your chest, not fear, but understanding. She carries the unspoken weight of 1,000 women. And she will carry the weight of 1,000 more. You find yourself standing just inside the entrance to one of the more lavish rooms now. The tatami mats beneath your feet have been freshly swept, their surface impeccably smooth and inviting, almost soft to the touch. The faint, sweet aroma of plum wine still lingers gently in the air, a delicate scent that mingles with the subtle fragrance of incense burning somewhere beyond your sight, adding layers of warmth and complexity to the atmosphere. Delicate candles flicker softly behind translucent silk screens, casting elegant, shifting silhouettes that dance gracefully across the papered walls. The light trembles with a gentle rhythm, as if it breathes in time with the quiet, almost imperceptible sighs of the room itself. Two figures are seated close together in this half-light. One of them laughs, the sound light and musical, reminiscent of the gentle tinkling of a bell floating through the air. The other leans forward, drawn irresistibly closer, as if pulled by some invisible, magnetic force. And then, suddenly, something happens that you did not expect. He reaches out and touches her hand, just briefly. Just lightly. But the moment stretches in the air far longer than it should. In a place built entirely on performance, on rehearsed movements and carefully spoken lines, that pause is dangerously fragile. Tonight, you are witnessing something that breaks the carefully guarded script, a courtesan in love. This kind of feeling is not rare, really. The surprise is not that she has begun to feel something genuine for a client. The surprise is that he feels it back. Because in Yoshiwara, affection is expected, it is part of the business. But sincerity is strictly forbidden. It is a boundary no one dares cross. You watch her laugh again, but now it is softer, more natural. It is not the high, forced trill she uses for others. Her smile lingers, holding just a moment longer than usual. Her shoulders relax in a way you have never seen before, as if a great weight has eased from them. She pours him sake, not because it is expected of her, but because she truly wants to. And that, you realize, is the problem. Love complicates everything. Especially when your body begins reacting in ways it is contractually forbidden to, it always begins the same way. She misses her next period. Then the one after that. At first, she tells herself it is stress, or poor diet, or the toll of too many long nights spent serving others. But deep inside, she knows the truth. And the terrifying part is that this time, the client was not just anyone. It was him. Courtesans have rules. They are trained to manage their emotions like inventory. Smiles, laughter, even jealousy are tools to be wielded carefully, not reflections of truth. But some clients break that rhythm. They return night after night. They ask questions that matter. They listen without pawing. They remember birthdays. They bring books. Sometimes, they write poetry. Usually, it is bad poetry, but the meaning is sincere. Historians continue to debate whether such patron-courtesan romances were genuine or merely transactional. Some argue that wealthy clients manipulated lonely women with false promises of rescue. Others insist that courtesans, though bound by contract and circumstance, retained agency, and that sometimes, true attachment blossoms despite everything. You lean against a wooden beam, listening as she talks about poetry. He has stopped paying with coins, now he leaves unsealed envelopes full of letters instead. She hides them carefully, never showing the other girls. They are folded and stored in a fabric pouch beneath her futon, treated delicately as if the paper might tear. When she finally realizes she is pregnant, she does not cry right away. She waits. Drinks the teas said to bring back the moon. Wraps her belly tighter with linen bindings. She even tries a remedy overheard in whispers, soaking a bamboo leaf in vinegar and placing it under her tongue every night for 7 nights. But nothing happens. Then, one evening, she tells him, not directly. Instead, she says quietly, "I've been feeling different lately." He frowns. Sick. She shakes her head. Tired. She shakes her head again. Then she looks down at her hands resting on her lap and says, "I'm not alone anymore." You expect panic. You expect him to leave. To vanish like the others, but he does not. He touches her hand again. The same way he did weeks before. Then he says softly, "We will figure it out." Of course, figuring it out in Edo, Japan is not like figuring it out today. He cannot simply take her away. She is under contract, tied to the house by an astronomical sum that he would have to pay to buy her freedom, often more than a merchant might earn in an entire lifetime. Some men manage it, but most do not. In the meantime, she must keep working. Keep hiding. Keep binding. You watch her grow quieter among the other girls. She skips dinner now, drinks only thin broth. She avoids the madam's gaze, her eyes downcast. She is still smiling for clients, but the smile carries a shadow now. You begin to wonder if love, in this place, is just another kind of debt. There is an old saying among the courtesans, "A man's promise is softer than silk." It means that promises slip away, unravel, and disappear the moment you lean on them, yet some girls believe anyway. One left with a merchant who swore he would start a new life with her. She ended up in a smaller house, 2 towns away, renamed, repainted, re-owned. Another was told she would be taken to Kyoto next season. That was 5 years ago. She is still here, and yet. Rumors persist of rare success stories. Whispers, shared like fairy tales. One girl rescued and married by a samurai, now running a tea house by a quiet lake. Another taken in by a poet who never touched her, but wove her name into every stanza. Whether true or not, these stories offer hope. And hope, fragile as it may be, is addictive. You check on her days later. She has changed. Her kimono fits looser now. Her eyes are rimmed with pink. She tells the other girls she caught a cold. But you notice how she clutches her stomach whenever she thinks no one is watching. Then, one evening, he stops coming. No letters. No messenger. No explanation. She waits by the door for 2 nights. Then 3. Then a week. Finally, she takes out the pouch of letters and burns them in the brazier. There is no big scene. No dramatic crying. Just quiet. And the next morning, she goes to Obasan. You do not follow her into that room. You already know what awaits inside, the smoke, the needles, the silence, and when she emerges, days later, she smiles at a new client as if nothing has ever happened. You pass her in the hallway and catch her scent, plum blossoms and powdered camellia. She nods to you, you nod back, because even when love ends, the house goes on. The sliding doors keep opening and closing. The music continues to play softly. And the courtesans, no matter what they have lost, must keep pretending they have lost nothing at all. By now, you can spot it. Not the pregnancy itself, no, that is hidden far too well beneath layers of silk, subtle folds, and carefully maintained posture, but the subtle signs of someone trying much too hard to appear normal. The exaggerated posture, practiced repeatedly and endlessly until it becomes second nature, designed specifically to avoid drawing even the faintest hint of attention. The deliberate selection of robes, often favoring vertical stripes or delicate, flowing patterns, chosen because they help elongate the silhouette and skillfully disguise any unexpected changes in shape beneath the fabric. The slightly higher obi, tied just a fraction above where it should naturally rest. A small detail that holds great importance in the choreography of concealment. You are watching an art form that is rehearsed with care and precision, a heartbreaking performance crafted to be as seamless as it is invisible. Tonight, you find yourself in the dressing room with 3 courtesans. They chat lightly about hairstyles, pretending to argue over which style is more seductive, the intricate whirlwind twist or the soft, flowing falling cherry bun. Their voices are light, teasing, filled with the practiced ease of women who have mastered the delicate skill of keeping their troubles hidden beneath layers of grace. Yet in the mirror, you catch one of them quietly adjusting her obi with far too much concentration. She pulls it tighter, then turns slowly, checking her reflection from 3 different angles. Her gaze is intense, studying every curve and shadow with a focus that reveals both hope and fear. Finally satisfied, she nods once, subtle but certain, and then allows the conversation to resume as if nothing unusual has occurred. This is what it means to be hidden in plain sight. Later that evening, you walk beside her as she moves carefully through the dimly lit corridors. She moves slowly, deliberately, with quiet intention. Not sluggishly, no, that would immediately raise suspicion, but just enough to avoid any sharp turns or sudden pressure on her abdomen. When she bows, she bends only from the waist, carefully keeping her hips still and steady. When she sits, she leans forward slightly, arranging her arms artfully to block any possible view of her lower body. Her smile remains effortless, practiced, rehearsed as though worn like a mask. Every movement has been learned, repeated, and perfected over many nights. Historians still debate how long courtesans could manage to hide pregnancies in this way. Some claim that a skilled woman could conceal her condition for 5 or 6 months without anyone noticing. Others argue that discovery was inevitable by the 3rd month at the latest. But the surviving records tell another story, showing that many lasted surprisingly long, especially those who held higher ranks within the house. Their steady earnings made the madam reluctant to scrutinize them too closely, as losing such a valuable girl would mean losing important customers and status. You begin to notice the subtle tricks they use. A sash with a looser inner lining allows room for the belly to expand discreetly without drawing attention. A decorative outer robe is layered so that it falls in ways creating flattering shadows, carefully disguising curves and softening the outline. A small hand fan is held strategically when walking past the madam, obscuring the view just enough to maintain the illusion. One experienced girl even teaches the others how to sit with one leg bent just so, adjusting the slope of the belly ever so slightly to fool both the eye and the mind. It is a geometric sleight of hand, a careful performance of angles and shapes designed to deceive. And the makeup becomes part of the act as well. Rouge is brushed higher on the cheeks to draw attention upward and away from the midsection. A slightly brighter lip color is chosen to distract from the paler skin that often accompanies the hidden pregnancy. One girl always wears an ornamental comb angled sharply in her bun. It catches the flickering lantern light and pulls the eye upward. It is not simply fashion, it is deliberate camouflage, a vital part of the disguise, but all this effort takes its toll. You see it most clearly in their eyes, especially as the night deepens. The tension hiding behind their lashes, the faint creases beginning to form where none should be. Their backs ache more than usual. Their breathing becomes shallower, tighter, as if each inhalation must be carefully measured. One girl admits in a rare moment of honesty that she binds her belly so tightly she sometimes dreams she is being crushed beneath a temple bell. Still, they persist, because sometimes, the house does not want to know. If a girl is valuable, popular, profitable, skilled in conversation, the madam may choose to look the other way longer than she should. After all, losing her means losing customers and the status that comes with them. So suspicion is ignored, evidence is downplayed, and as long as the clients do not complain, the illusion continues to hold firm. One evening, you watch a courtesan entertaining a wealthy merchant who is halfway through his 3rd cup of sake. She flirts effortlessly, leaning in to whisper, her eyes glimmering in the candlelight. Her robe is stunning, layers of silk in deep shades of midnight blue and pale water lily. It pools around her like smoke, flowing and shifting with her every movement. From every angle, she looks flawless. But when she rises to leave, you see it, a brief flicker of discomfort crosses her face before she quickly smooths it away. She laughs softly and gently touches his sleeve, shifting the conversation before he can notice her momentary pain. He does not notice, but you do. Later, you find her in a quiet back hallway, carefully unwrapping the bindings around her waist with slow, deliberate care. The skin beneath is red and deeply marked by the cloth, tender from hours of constriction. She inhales for the first time in hours, then exhales with a visible relief that moves through her body like a tide pulling away from the shore. There is a soft knock at the far door. A dresser enters. Carrying a new obi, thicker, darker, patterned with cranes flying diagonally across the fabric. It is perfect for creating a sense of motion and drawing the eye across the body, not down. They do not say why it is needed. They do not have to. Among the courtesans, there exists a silent code: you help me bind, and I will help you breathe. You distract the madam while I take the bitter tea. You look away when I flinch, and I will do the same for you when your turn comes. One evening, you pass a mirror and catch sight of a girl tracing her silhouette with trembling fingers. She is memorizing it, trying to decide how much longer she can hold the illusion together. When she notices you watching, she smiles faintly. "New obi," she says, tapping her waist lightly. "Doesn't it make me look thinner?" You nod, because that is what you are supposed to do, not comfort her. Not ask what will happen next. Just nod, and carry on with the performance. You begin to see it everywhere, a hand placed just so during dances. A turned shoulder when serving tea. A subtle shift in weight while kneeling, designed to redistribute pressure evenly. Every movement practiced. Every illusion fiercely protected. One of the older women tells a story, a legend, really, about a courtesan who wore a special robe said to be enchanted by a shrine priest. It made her appear slender no matter what. She hid a pregnancy until the night she gave birth behind a painted screen, then returned to work the very next day. No one believed it, but everyone hoped it was true, because the truth is far less magical. The truth is that hiding means surviving. That bending your body and spirit to remain in the house, to stay in favor, to keep your place, is a skill learned through repetition, not miracles. And as you pass a line of women preparing for another night, adjusting sashes, testing poses in mirrors, forcing smiles, you realize, Yoshiwara is not simply a theater. It is a hall of mirrors, where truth is always dressed in silk and every reflection has been carefully edited by necessity, and yet, no one sees it. Not the clients. Not the public. Not the city beyond the gates, only you, wandering silently, invisible in the candlelight.
The red paper lanterns sway gently in the cool night breeze, their warm, flickering light casting soft halos that dance playfully across the smooth stones of the courtyard. Somewhere nearby, the slow, melancholic sound of a shamisen hums lazily through the stillness of the air, 3 long, repeated notes, calm and haunting, like a whispered sigh carried delicately by the night wind. You follow the faint trail of music, curiosity guiding your steps quietly and carefully, until you find yourself in one of the quieter wings of the brothel, a secluded corner reserved only for the most trusted and senior courtesans. Here, everything feels quieter, more deliberate, more practiced, and somehow infinitely more dangerous. And tonight, something unusual unfolds before your eyes. 2 women sit closely beside a small wash basin, their voices carrying louder than you would expect for such a private place. They giggle together, light and conspiratorial, sharing a secret that only they fully understand. One casually waves a handkerchief stained a vivid, unmistakable red. You realize immediately this is no accident. It is a performance carefully crafted for a specific purpose. You have just walked into one of the carefully staged mock menstruations. It begins with artful stagecraft, a substitute for blood made from crushed red beans, powdered cochineal, or sometimes a carefully blended mixture of wine and ink. The color must be exact, deep, rich, yet never too bright. The consistency must be believable, flowing with just the right thickness, not too watery, not so thick as to look unnatural or fake. There is a delicate science to this theater, a craft passed down among courtesans like secret recipes locked away in whispers and shadows, handed carefully from one generation to the next. You watch as a third girl feigns a grimace, pressing her hand lightly to her abdomen with just the right touch of dramatic weariness. "Ah," she murmurs softly, "the moons come heavy this month." An assistant, who you suspect is fully in on the act, responds with a knowing nod and a sly smirk, "Then you'll be spared the bath tonight." This is not a joke or a game. It is a form of protection, because when the house suspects that a girl might be hiding something, anything, the staff conduct surprise inspections. These checks do not only happen in private rooms but especially in the communal bathhouse, where robes are shed and no secret can cling to wet skin. A missed period, even once, invites questions. Miss too many, and punishments follow swiftly and without mercy, so the courtesans invent proof. You hear whispered tales of soaked linen strips dipped secretly into pig's blood purchased from the kitchen. Another girl uses mashed berries mixed with fine iron shavings to darken the stain, making it look more authentic and fresh. The key is freshness. Stale blood smells wrong and a shade too dark or too faint raises immediate suspicion. Timing is everything. One girl accidentally drops a bloodied cloth near the washerwoman. Another slips one into the latrine, where it is sure to be found by the keen eyes of the staff. These small acts of deception become vital lifelines. Whispered strategies of survival. Historians still debate whether these elaborate practices were common knowledge among courtesans or exceptional acts of desperation born from necessity. Some believe they were carefully taught among circles of senior courtesans, passed as essential survival skills to new girls entering the house. Others argue they were improvised on the spot, born from moments of panic and fear. But the evidence is there, tricks reused, perfected, shared between girls like lullabies murmured quietly at bedtime. One experienced courtesan advises a newcomer, always fake your moon on inspection day. Even if it is real, make sure they see it. In Yoshiwara, perception is everything. Silence alone does not protect. You must manufacture proof of normalcy, each month, every single time without fail. You follow one of these girls as she quietly prepares her scene. She carries a small pouch sewn carefully into the lining of her robe. Inside, cotton balls are daubed in beet juice and vinegar, their smell faintly strange but carefully masked with clove oil to avoid detection. She ties the pouch loosely to her inner sash, then waits patiently for the right moment to reveal her carefully planned deception. Later that evening, the assistant madam arrives to perform a courtesy check. It is a quick visual sweep, nothing too invasive, unless something appears amiss. The girl acts startled, offers a soft apology, then produces the stained cloth with a sheepish, practiced smile. "Oh." The assistant exclaims with a relieved step backward. "No need to worry then." Scene complete. No questions asked. You exhale quietly, though you are not the one under scrutiny, but the performance does not end with this single moment. You discover that some courtesans take their roles even further, scripting entire monologues of discomfort and complaint. They speak of back pain, bloating, sudden heat flashes that come without warning. They ask specifically for ginger tea or a warm compress. One even tells a client in passing, "Forget the wine tonight. I am not feeling quite myself." These carefully crafted touches add depth and credibility to their act. And clients, blissfully unaware, often respond with indulgent sympathy. One gentleman offers to bring her a special fan blessed by a temple priest, designed to cool the blood and bring relief. Meanwhile, backstage preparations are just as detailed and deliberate. One girl fakes a heat rash by pressing crushed rose petals gently into her skin, creating a soft redness that looks convincing in the candlelight. Another slips a dried plum pit into her slipper, forcing herself to walk with a slight wince of discomfort. Pain equals authenticity in this delicate theater. Still, it is not always enough. You overhear the assistant madam muttering that one girl's color looked far too bright last month. Too pink, she says with a disapproving glance. Almost cheerful. They are watching now, sharper than ever. Next time, that girl will have to adjust her recipe, add something iron-rich. Perhaps cook the mixture longer. The drama of survival never truly ends here. Then, there are the failures. One girl forgets to replace her pouch before a real bath inspection. The stain has dried and crumbles under the examiner's touch. She is caught. Pulled aside. Given moon leave for 5 days. But everyone knows it is not rest. It is probation. And if she does not bleed for real soon, her days here will be numbered. You pass through a courtyard where two girls whisper quietly under a blooming plum tree. One presses a hand lightly to her belly and says in a hushed voice she is 5 months along. How have they not noticed? The other gasps in disbelief. She shrugs with a small, knowing smile. I bleed on command. They laugh together softly, but their eyes do not share the humor. You sit nearby, listening to the soft rustle of the leaves stirred by the gentle wind. There is something quietly beautiful in the way they lie. Not from malice or mischief, but from preservation. They are not tricking the house to cause trouble or defy authority. They are tricking it to stay alive. To keep working. To delay punishment. To avoid exile. You find yourself quietly admiring their ingenuity. The courage it takes to turn a natural bodily function into theater, month after month. The skill of pretending to be regular, just so they are not marked as defective. The grace it takes to smile through it all, even when the pain and fear run deep beneath the surface. The night grows colder, and the red lanterns sway gently once more, soft against the dark sky. A girl walks by, humming faintly, the tender tune of an old lullaby. Hidden carefully beneath her robe, just for tonight, is a fake moon, a blood-red lie, warm against her skin, ready for its cue. It is deep into the night now. The earlier noise of guests laughing and the soft clinking of porcelain has faded into a distant, barely there murmur, like waves breaking far from the shore, gentle and retreating. Even the soft music that once drifted from the chambers has stilled completely. Most of the house is asleep, or at least pretending to be. Curtains are drawn tight, shutting out the world. Candles are snuffed one by one until only faint shadows remain. Voices, if any remain at all, are hushed whispers, barely audible in the stillness. But not you. You remain awake, your eyes fixed on the shadows that linger at the edge of the courtyard, where the lamplight dims and the silence grows thick. Almost tangible, something is happening. A girl steps silently through the narrow servants' gate at the far end. Her feet are bare against the cool stones. Her hair is bundled tightly behind her head, not pinned for beauty, but for movement and efficiency. One hand grips the folds of her robe with quiet tension, as if holding on to something more than just fabric. The other clutches a small cloth bundle, pressed close to her chest protectively. She does not glance left or right. She does not hesitate or pause for a breath. She does not need to. She has already memorized this path, likely traced it in her mind every night since the fear first took root. This is a midnight escape. You follow her at a careful distance, making sure your sandals do not stir the gravel underfoot. She crosses the garden stones with slow, measured steps. Behind the kitchen now, passing heaps of discarded firewood piled carelessly and the cracked mortar basin long since abandoned. Then she slips through a nearly invisible door, a narrow crack between the bamboo fencing and the old pond where the carp no longer swim. On the other side lies a cramped alleyway, dim and silent. At its end, a waiting ox cart stands patiently. Its driver is slouched at the reins, an old man with a bowed spine and an expressionless face. He neither greets her nor questions her arrival. He has seen this before many times. She does not run. Running would be noisy and reckless. Running would draw dangerous attention. Instead, every footstep is precise, every motion calculated. She has practiced this journey in her head for weeks, maybe months. She knows the route by heart. She knows exactly how many breaths it takes to reach the cart. She knows how long she can stop, how far she must go before the sun begins to rise. This is not a romantic escape. This is not the mad dash of a girl swept off her feet by a client with whispered promises and half-formed plans. This is not a love story. This is business. This is survival, because sometimes, the bitter teas fail. The incense and smoke do not take hold. The prayers go unanswered. And the body changes anyway. When it becomes clear that the brothel will soon discover what she is hiding, when the belly can no longer be disguised or denied, there remains only one option: disappear. Historians continue to debate how often courtesans fled in the middle of the night. Some argue such escapes were rare, that the gates were locked and guarded too tightly. Others point to ledgers where names abruptly vanish, no retirement recorded, no death noted, no mention of sale or transfer. Just a blank line where a life once was. Erasure, official and absolute. But behind those silent omissions are stories like this one. You settle quietly on the back rail of the cart, unseen and unacknowledged. The girl says nothing. She does not cry. Her face is calm, almost serene. Her small bundle shifts slightly in her lap. You wonder what she brought with her. Likely a second robe, folded carefully. A handful of coins sewn into the hem for emergencies. Perhaps a simple figurine carved from wood. A tiny charm for luck, for safe passage. Something small enough to carry, but meaningful enough to protect. She is not going far. Not tonight. Perhaps only to the outskirts of town. To a countryside house with boarded windows. To a midwife's cottage nestled in a rice field. To the home of a cousin married to a fisherman, someone willing to keep quiet. Anywhere with a door that locks and no one asks questions. Anywhere that is not here. The old man at the reins clicks his tongue softly. The ox stirs from its rest. The wheels begin to turn, creaking slowly, groaning as they roll over uneven stones and rutted earth. This is not the first time he has done this. In truth, many such men operate in the twilight world surrounding Yoshiwara. Former vendors, retired guards, old monks who no longer preach. They are the quiet facilitators of disappearances. They do not speak. They do not ask names. They do not write anything down. But they always know who needs to leave and when. You pass a wayside shrine as the cart turns a bend in the road. The shrine is small and weather-worn, its wood faded and cracked by seasons of sun and rain. A line of fox statues rests at the base, their faces calm, watching without judgment. The girl dips her head slightly in reverence. Maybe it is a ritual. Maybe it is fear. Or maybe she simply needs one final blessing before she crosses the threshold into the unknown. You feel the cold settle more deeply now. The night air grows heavier, thick with mist. Her breath fogs slightly in front of her face. She wraps her robe tighter around her body, seeking comfort against the chill. In another life, she might have stayed. Might have hidden better. Might have made it through the inspection unnoticed. Might have given birth in secret. Handed the child away in silence. Returned to the painted face and rehearsed smile as if nothing had ever changed. Just another girl with another secret, but that door had begun to close. You think of what she is leaving behind, a narrow futon rolled neatly in the corner. A simple lacquered mirror with a small chip along its edge. Two carefully folded robes, stacked just so. A bowl with chipped paint that she always used for tea. Perhaps a friend or two who understood the truth. Perhaps not. Most of all, a name, a courtesan's name, chosen by the house, spoken by clients. A name that will be erased by morning. She is no longer Hana no Kiku, the chrysanthemum of the blossoms. She is now only a girl in the back of a cart, clutching her bundle, hoping the road ahead is longer than the one behind. You glance ahead. The road is rough and darker than it seemed in the lamplight. The ox cart trudges forward slowly, the rhythm steady and lulling, like a cradle on wheels. The forest edges begin to thicken on either side. Branches lean low over the path, forming ghostly arches in the night. Then you remember the risk. If she is caught before dawn, the punishment will not be light. She will be dragged back in disgrace. Her face will be marked with shame. She will be fined, perhaps beaten, and watched with relentless scrutiny. Her contract might be extended by years. Her rank lowered. She might be forbidden to entertain clients at all, sentenced instead to silent work, scrubbing floors, cleaning latrines, bowing without being seen. Or worse still, she could be cast out entirely, no certificate, no status, nothing to prove she ever served. She would become one of the nameless women who linger on temple steps, offering half-remembered charm work in exchange for a bowl of rice or a cup of broth. But if she can last until sunrise, then she can begin again. The house will mark her as runaway, log the loss, and carry on. It is simply another cost of business. No bounty sent. No men hired to retrieve her. A quiet replacement will be summoned from a rural village. One girl leaves, another arrives. Names shift. Faces change. The house survives. You feel the ox cart begin to slow. The driver taps his stick twice against the wooden frame. It is the signal. Time to walk. The girl nods. She steps down with care, adjusts her robe at the knees, smooths the cloth bundle under her arm. Her eyes sweep across the horizon, where the hills begin to stretch upward into shadow. In the pale hush of pre-dawn, she looks almost ordinary. A traveling figure on a rural path. But you know she is not simply fleeing a contract. She is fleeing punishment. She is fleeing silence. She is fleeing the consequence of biology in a place that profits by pretending women do not bleed, do not ache, do not carry. She breathes deeply once. Then again. Then vanishes into the trees without looking back, and just like that, she is gone. Back at the brothel, her absence will be discovered soon. Someone will find the empty futon. The assistant madam will curse under her breath. A few girls will gasp, perform surprise. The head madam will sigh, calculate the debt, and send word to the tailor. New robes will be sewn. A new name assigned, but no one in that house will ever truly know what happened out here, only you. The temple is quiet this morning. Not lifeless. Not empty. Just quiet in that very particular, measured way that only very old places seem to know how to be. The kind of quiet that listens carefully rather than rushing to speak. The kind of quiet that holds stories deep within its stones and would rather than telling them aloud. You find yourself drifting slowly beneath the heavy stone torii gate, its broad base chipped and dusted with patches of soft moss, into a shaded pathway flanked on either side by rows of time-worn lanterns. Their carved surfaces are softened by the slow passage of years, some of them almost entirely cloaked in pale green lichen. The lanterns seem to watch you silently as you pass. You step lightly, almost reverently, toward the small wooden shrine that sits tucked quietly behind the larger, more ornate altar, almost forgotten in the corner. This is not a temple meant for weddings or blessings of abundance. This is not a place where courtesans come to ask for fortune, or favor, or the bright fame of prosperity. This is not the shrine of lovers or brides. No, this place is quieter, older, and meant for a different kind of plea. A more private one. A more fragile one. This is where they come to ask for something that most would never dare to speak aloud, to not become mothers. Here, the offerings are never loud or colorful. There are no celebratory clappings of hands. No brightly colored prayer flags fluttering in the breeze. Instead, there is only stillness. A lowered head. A whispered petition, barely audible in the morning air. And sometimes, when the need feels urgent enough, a single copper coin pressed carefully into the earth, hidden beneath a small stone, like a secret meant only for the gods to find. You pause at the edge of the worn stone steps and watch as one girl kneels in front of the shrine. Her sleeves spread out on either side of her like wings folded in gentle rest. With practiced care, she draws a thin white silk ribbon from the folds of her inner sleeve. The kind used at funerals and moments of solemn farewell. She places it gently at the base of the altar, straightens the ribbon carefully so it lies flat, then presses the hem of her robe softly against her forehead in a solemn gesture before bowing again. She begins to murmur prayers. Her lips barely move, but the shape of the words is unmistakable. She is not asking for love. Not even for safety. She is asking for stillness. She is praying for the absence of change. She is praying for the emptiness to remain untouched. During the Edo period, women of all social classes visited fertility shrines, praying fervently for children, for sons, for large and healthy families to carry on their names. But the courtesans reversed this custom. Their prayers moved in the opposite direction. Instead of asking for birth and abundance, they begged for silence inside their bodies. Please, one might whisper with desperate hope, let nothing grow. Or, if something has already taken root, let it pass without notice. Historians still debate how codified these rituals truly were. Some say the prayers followed no formal structure at all. Simply words spoken in quiet desperation. Others believe the courtesans developed secret rites of their own, blending folk beliefs with temple customs, using whatever materials they could gather to shape the fragile magic of prevention. But the offerings they left behind remain, and they speak with quiet certainty to those who know how to look. You see them now, scattered among the stones and tucked carefully into hidden corners, a weather-worn doll whose face has been rubbed nearly featureless by rain and time. A scrap of faded kimono fabric, its pattern washed pale and almost forgotten. A child's sandal, far too small to belong to anyone here. These are not tokens of welcome. They are offerings of refusal. There are emma too, small wooden plaques on which worshippers usually draw hopes and prayers. Most shrines hang them proudly from hooks or display them along fences for all to see. But not here. These are hidden from sight, placed carefully in the cracks between stones or laid flat beneath offerings of incense smoke. The drawings are simple and stark. One shows an empty cradle. Another, a heart locked tightly inside a birdcage. One bears only the words, "Not this time." You walk alongside another girl who visits this shrine regularly, always alone. She says she is not superstitious. That the gods, if they exist at all, have long stopped listening to prayers such as hers. Still, she returns each week without fail. She lights a single stick of incense. She touches her belly once, briefly, as though checking if it has betrayed her secret. Then she turns and leaves. Perhaps she finds no answers here. But perhaps, in the quiet of the shrine, she finds something else. A moment to breathe, to feel the weight ease just a little. The priest does not speak much. He knows why they come, and he offers no lectures, asks no uncomfortable questions. In fact, he keeps a separate drawer filled with small charms reserved only for these girls. They are not the usual blessings meant to bring fortune or longevity. They are discreet and specific. A length of red thread knotted tightly around a dried seed. A folded talisman sealed with wax and tied 13 times with a strand of black string. When he offers one, he says the same thing each time, "Keep this with you until the moon returns." Do they work? No one can say for certain, but in a world where choices are rare and punishments swift, sometimes the power to speak a fear aloud, to lay it gently at the foot of a god and ask for mercy, is enough to keep going, enough to live another day. You stop when you see something that draws your breath short. A small, smooth rock, painted carefully with red ink. The single word across it reads, Shirenai. I do not know. Not a prayer. Not a promise. A confession. Near the edge of the steps, another girl weeps quietly into her sleeve. Her shoulders shake with soft, restrained sobs, but she does not wail or call out. This is not her first time here. You can tell by the way she leans against the wooden post. By how her body finds the exact place in the step that has been worn soft by knees and time. Her spine curls forward, her hands clutch her robe tightly across her abdomen. You do not need to hear her speak to know what she fears, you sit beside her, as always, invisible and silent. The only sound between you is the soft hiss of incense rising into the air, curling upward in delicate, lazy spirals. There is no breeze, but the smoke dances anyway, as if remembering something long past. As if performing a ritual beyond words, you wonder how many women have knelt here over the years. How many courtesans have pressed their foreheads to these same steps and asked for what they could not say out loud anywhere else. This shrine, like the girls who come here, has adapted through time. The Jizo statue, once meant to protect children, now stands as a quiet guardian of those who must avoid them. Its stone face is chipped and weathered, but its gaze remains steady and unwavering. Later, one girl tells a story over a quiet bowl of tea. A local superstition. If you tie a strand of your hair to the cedar branch near the temple's outer gate, your body will remain closed until the hair is untied. She does not know if it is true. She tied hers 3 months ago. She has not bled since. Her voice catches on the edge of her next sentence. She does not know whether to be grateful or afraid. You pass the offering box as you leave and notice something half hidden beneath it. A paper charm, creased and lightly stained, scrawled in hurried brush strokes, let me finish paying my debt first. Then I will welcome life. The irony sits heavy in your chest, these women, who are trained to embody longing. Who are paid to perform affection, who are expected to sell the illusion of future families, spend their real lives quietly begging not to create one. They whisper prayers against their own fertility, not because they are cold or unfeeling, but because the system demands they remain untouched by consequence. They offer up their bodies while fighting silently to retain ownership of them, and the universe. The gods, they remain silent. Just like the temple. Just like the girl walking away now, her steps measured, her head bowed low, you follow her back through the quiet streets, past shuttered doors and lanterns dimmed by the morning light. She does not speak for the rest of the day. But when night comes, and the house begins to stir again with laughter, smoke, and the rustle of silks, she sits before her mirror. She paints her lips carefully. She shapes her smile with practiced ease. She checks the part in her hair once more. And just before rising to meet her first client, she whispers softly to her own reflection, still mine. For now. The door slides shut with a soft, measured hiss, far too gentle for the weight it carries. The sound barely stirs the still air, yet it signals the beginning of something irreversible, something that will change everything. You are now inside the matron's room, a place where judgment comes wrapped in silk and spoken in tones so low they never rise above polite conversation. The wooden floors gleam underfoot, scrubbed repeatedly until they shine with a near-mirror finish. The cushions lie arranged in perfect symmetry, stiff and thin, as if any softness might suggest leniency or weakness. In the corner, a stick of incense burns slowly, its smoke curling upward in thin, curling spirals. Trying and failing to mask the scent beneath, the faint, dry smell of powdered rice mixed with lacquered wood, and lingering over it all, the unmistakable trace of anxiety. Beside the madam lies her fan, closed and completely still. It rests on the mat like a blade placed carefully beside its sheath. That is never a good sign. You keep to the corner, invisible as always, watching silently as a young courtesan kneels with impeccable form before the matron. Her knees are pressed tightly together. Her spine is drawn taut, stretched straight like a string pulled to its limit. Her hands rest folded neatly in her lap. Her head is bowed low, not out of reverence, but because it would be unbearable to meet the eyes fixed across from her. She is not crying yet. Not now. She has already rehearsed this moment countless times in her mind. She knows exactly what is about to unfold. Tonight, the house has found out. It could have been anyone. A careless whisper behind a folding screen. A customer with sharper eyes than most. A stain too pale, too watery, or too fresh to be overlooked. Maybe she was just unlucky. Maybe the signs simply added up over time. Or perhaps she had simply been watched too long. But the how no longer matters. The outcome is now in motion. What matters most is the expression on the madam's face, calm, unreadable, fixed in that mask of distant professionalism that leaves no room for appeal. You have seen this before. You have seen how the atmosphere changes instantly, how the walls seem to close in around them, how silence becomes a kind of pressure, thick and heavy. You recognize the pattern. The ritual of revelation, it always begins the same way, with questions delivered in gentle, soft tones, so calm they almost seem caring. But the softness is a veil. The danger lives just beneath it. When was your last cycle? Did you drink the smoked tea? Is there a client we should be aware of? Each question is like a blade wrapped in cloth. The girl answers carefully, weighing every word like stepping stones across a river she knows could drown her. This is not a scolding. It is a negotiation. The wrong word could lengthen her contract. The wrong pause could brand her untrustworthy. The truth, if it leaks out too quickly, could end everything. Historians still argue about the consequences courtesans truly faced for pregnancy. Some say it depended entirely on the house. That punishments varied wildly from place to place. Some brothels showed mercy, others punished swiftly and without pity. Others claimed the rules were always strict but rarely enforced evenly. It all came down to a single variable, value, and here, value means income. If a courtesan is popular, well-liked, and highly requested, the house may choose to overlook the transgression. They may quietly arrange for a discreet physician, a whispered absence explained away as illness. If she draws crowds, the house does not want to lose her. But if she is fading, if her clients have grown fewer, if her name no longer turns heads or fills rooms, then the mercy evaporates completely. What remains is cold calculation. Punishment becomes procedure. The girl before you balances precariously in that uncertain middle ground. She is not a star, but she is not forgotten either. Her fate teeters in the pause that follows her answer. The madam folds her hands together. Fingers interlaced tightly. Her voice remains steady, calm, never rising. You understand what this means. The girl nods slowly. What follows is a list, spoken without emotion, like reading a weather report. Each sentence is delivered deliberately, slowly, to ensure there is no misunderstanding. A fine will be imposed, equal to 3 months of her earnings. She will be suspended from regular clients. Her contract will likely be extended by 1 year, possibly more, depending on the discretion of the house. And then, the part that is not said out loud, if she tries to disappear, she will be blacklisted. If she disobeys, she will be watched closely, monitored at all times. The threat hangs between them like a scent. Unscented but unmistakable, the girl bows again, lower this time. Her forehead nearly touches the mat beneath her. Her hands tremble just slightly, the only visible betrayal of her fear. And then she is dismissed, just like that. You follow her as she leaves the room. Her steps are small and hesitant, her shoulders rounded forward as if carrying a heavy burden. Her breath is shallow, as if she is afraid to draw too much attention even now. She returns quietly to her quarters, where the lamp has already gone cold. She kneels beside her futon, but does not lie down. Instead, she begins to remove her jewelry, one piece at a time. The earrings. The comb. The rings. Each ornament is placed gently into a cloth pouch, as if she is slowly unwrapping herself from a role she never truly got to stop playing. She says nothing. Her face remains blank, unreadable. But the stillness around her feels louder than any sob. There are others like her. So many. One girl was discovered in her 5th month. By then, her shape could no longer be explained away. The house refused her any final payment. No farewell. No allowance. She pleaded, claiming the child belonged to a noble client, someone with a name and status. The madam scoffed coldly, unless he names you in court, the child belongs to the wind. Her name was struck from the ledger the very next morning. Not even a note. Just a single line drawn through it. Another girl confessed early, hoping that honesty might earn her mercy. She came forward before anyone even suspected, thinking she might be spared punishment. Instead, she was transferred to a lesser house. No screens to hide behind. No music to soften the nights. No fine robes. There, she serves men with thick fingers and heavy breaths, the kind of men who do not ask for poetry or stories. They ask only for bodies, but not all punishments are formal. Sometimes they arrive in glances that avoid her eyes. In absences where her presence is no longer acknowledged. In the silence of shared baths where no one scoots aside to make room for her. In the laughter that no longer includes her. She becomes a story whispered between girls. A lesson stitched carefully into warning. At the kitchen, 2 house servants murmur quietly while rinsing lacquered bowls. They caught Maru, one says plainly, not even lowering her voice, she's 3 months along, the other replies. Tried to hide it under that long-sleeved furosode. Too much swelling. And she couldn't keep down the plum wine. Obvious. They laugh softly. Not with cruelty. Just with resignation. Like commenting on the weather. Like noting someone spilled ink on the account book. A mistake. A disruption. Nothing more. You glance toward Maru. She scrubs a lacquered bowl that already gleams. Her hands move in practiced rhythm. She says nothing. She does not even flinch, and what cuts even deeper is this: there is no room to grieve. No pause to absorb the shame or the fear. The house runs on strict schedules. A girl may receive her reprimand in the afternoon and be expected to serve drinks by sunset. She must smile. She must flatter. She must dance. No client is told the truth. They are left only to wonder why she seems less animated than before, why her laughter sounds thinner. One man complains that his favorite girl did not sparkle tonight. He tips her less. The madam notices. The girl is fined for failing to meet her quota. There is no margin for error, and yet, here and there, you catch glimmers of something else. One madam leaves a wrapped bundle of food beside a girl's pillow. A soft rice ball. A folded note with no words. Just an offering. She says, in a voice too low for others to hear, you will need strength. It is not comfort. But it is not cruelty either. Maybe she remembers. Maybe once, long ago, she knelt in this same place, an older woman, retired now, once admitted to you in a rare moment of honesty that she had given birth in secret. Her madam helped her. On one condition, she must never speak of it. Not to the house. Not to her clients. Not even to the child. You carry that story like a small flame burning in your chest, flickering but real, but most of the time, the system swallows them whole. You pass by the madam's office 3 days later. A new list is posted. Rotations. Names. Assignments. One name is gone. No reason. No mention. No explanation. Inside, the madam sips her tea and fans herself slowly. Her eyes do not lift as she speaks, "We will need another girl by next week," she says quietly to her assistant, and the music starts again. The rain falls tonight in thin, silvery sheets, soft as gauze, persistent as breath, and strangely forgiving in its steady rhythm. It taps quietly against the slanted roof tiles of the modest houses scattered along the farthest edges of the city. These rooftops lie well beyond the gleaming gates, far past the lacquered screens, and beyond the polished corridors and flickering lanterns of Yoshiwara's pleasure district. Here, you are no longer within the walls of the world of silk and laughter. You have followed a trail that curves quietly past the last client's fading sigh, past the final page of the ledger left closed for the night, and past the hush of shame that swallows most stories whole. Never to be heard again, you have followed someone who kept the baby. This part of the story is far rarer, not because it happened less frequently, but because it was spoken of less, written of less, and remembered less by those who recorded history. Most who vanished carrying a child in their belly were assumed gone for good, dead in childbirth, destitute on the roadside, or disgraced in some nameless, forgotten corner of the countryside. But not all disappeared into the shadows. Some carved out another kind of life, quieter, harder, and less visible. You stand now at the doorway of a small house. It is not quite worn down, but not quite new either. The floors are lined with tatami mats, their edges fraying and soft from years of use. The paper on the sliding screen doors is faded and patched in several corners, showing the marks of time and weather. The faint scent of miso soup drifts gently from within, laced with the earthy dampness of straw mats that never fully dry after rain. Inside, a woman moves with quiet purpose. Once, she wore robes of brocade so heavy they whispered secrets as she walked. Now, she folds laundry streaked with plum juice, careful and unhurried. Once, she answered to the name Yuka. That name no longer belongs to her. Now, she is simply Okasan. She cradles a child, perhaps 4 years old, who hums softly to himself while dragging a piece of charcoal across a splintered scrap of wood. He draws lines and shapes that mean nothing to most but everything to him. You watch as she tucks a damp lock of hair behind her ear. It is the same gesture she once used to tease clients, to draw attention, to suggest interest. Here, it is practical. Nothing seductive. No need for painted lips or powdered faces. Just a mother, a son, and the soft sound of rain falling on the roof above them. She left 6 years ago. Her contract was nearly at its end when the pregnancy arrived like an ink blot on the finest silk. Sudden, spreading, impossible to erase. The man who fathered the child said nothing. He offered no name, no claim. The house gave her 2 choices: surrender the child and return, or disappear entirely. She disappeared, not into fairy tale or luxury, but into rice washing, into restless nights, into the weight of a small hand holding hers. Into a market where no one asks what she used to be. She says it was the hardest thing she ever did. And the best decision she will never speak of outside her own quiet thoughts. Historians continue to debate whether these women truly escaped or simply traded one kind of cage for another. Raising a child alone in Edo period Japan, without family, without rank, without a man to speak for you, meant suspicion followed you everywhere. It meant going hungry on some days. It meant being stared at in cold silence by neighbors and strangers alike. And yet, some women chose this path. You meet another woman, farther still from the city's fading lights. Her house is older, leaning slightly with age. The wooden floor groans under every step. The roof has been patched with layers of straw mats and old banners to keep the rain out. She raises chickens and sells pickled radish at the village gate. Her daughter helps her, a quiet girl with sharp eyes and nimble fingers who knows how to kneel properly, how to listen, and how to leave a room before questions are asked. The girl does not know where her mother came from. She only knows that her voice is beautiful. She only knows that her mother sings lullabies that make her eyes sting, even when she cannot understand the words. She only knows that her mother walks with her head held high. They call the woman Ko now. But once, long ago, she was known as the evening flame in a brothel on the main road. Her laugh was famous, and her robe was crimson like fire. Men used to pay extra just to watch her drink tea. Now she wears unbleached homespun fabric and ties her hair back in a plain, simple knot. She smiles rarely. But when she does, it is without performance or artifice. You sit across from her over a quiet cup of tea and listen as she speaks. "I thought I was finished," she says softly. No title. No silver. Just a child and a scar. Her hands tremble slightly as they wrap around the warm cup. But I learned something. A child doesn't care what your name was. They only care who boils the soup. Who finds their other sandal when they are crying. There is no grandeur here. No spectacle. Just routine and quiet resolve. Still, the world does not always let them rest. One evening, a man passes by and pauses too long. His eyes linger on the child. Too graceful, he mutters under his breath. Too clean for a farmer's daughter. The rumors begin. Eyes linger longer than before. Whispers start to spread. Ko packs again. Quietly. She moves again. Another woman, who now calls herself Aya, lives under a different name in the outer wards of Edo. She washes laundry for samurai households. She has twins. She tells everyone the children belong to her brother. The story is clean, plausible, and efficient. But one night, when one of the children wakes crying in the dark, you hear her voice through the thin walls of the house. It cracks in the middle of a whispered lullaby, filled with a tenderness too deep to be borrowed, and slowly, you begin to understand. These women did not escape punishment. They only accepted a different form of it. They gave up the names that once brought them power. Gave up the rich, shimmering clothes that once surrounded them. Gave up the recognition that once offered them safety. They are no longer courtesans, but they are not quite mothers either, at least not in any officially sanctioned way. They have become invisible in a world that only wanted them when they fit a certain script. But invisibility, while lonely and isolating, can sometimes become its own kind of freedom. One woman walks the same road every month and leaves a toy beside a weathered roadside Jizo statue. A little carved wooden horse. A spinning top. A block of wood shaped like a fox. She never speaks. She does not linger. But she always bows deeply, pressing her hands tightly together, as if offering thanks simply for being allowed to go on. Another woman wears a tiny sachet on a string around her neck. Inside it, a lock of soft, fine hair. When someone asks about it, she shrugs and says, "A charm. For luck." But each time thunder rolls in the distance, you see her fingertips brush the sachet as if checking whether the world is still holding. You hear one final story, told slowly by an elderly midwife living in a riverside village. Her house leans slightly to one side. Her memory may waver, but her eyes remain sharp and clear. Over her lifetime, she delivered 3 courtesan babies in secret. She never asked names, never took payment if they cried. But she remembers the sound each child made when they arrived into the world. They all sounded the same, she says quietly. Hungry. And alive. Then she adds, her gaze drifting toward the flowing river, and their mothers all looked the same, too. Like they had just broken out of jail. But left their hearts behind. You carry these stories with you as you walk away. You do not write them down. There is nowhere safe to put them. They do not fit neatly into scrolls, ledgers, or official registers. They are not part of sanctioned history. Their names have been erased. Their paths deliberately buried beneath layers of silence, shame, and myth, but you remember their faces, and as you walk back toward the distant glint of the brothel world, toward the powder and performance and the rustling silks of the lie, you carry something heavier and quieter with you, a different kind of courage, the kind that chooses to begin again. You find yourself back in Yoshiwara now. But not in the parts that people remember. Not in the corridors flooded with golden light, nor in the rooms filled with song or thick perfume or laughter rising and swirling like steam into the air. This is a different corner entirely. A place outside the dazzling pageantry and theatrical display. A narrow, shadowed alleyway that most visitors to the district never even notice. One where the air feels heavy and still, where the music from the larger houses cannot reach, where even whispers seem to hesitate, as though unsure whether it is safe to be spoken aloud. There is no sign marking this place. Only a weathered stone basin sits quietly, worn smooth from years of rain and use, alongside a crooked line of small stone statues. Each statue is no taller than your knee, standing shoulder to shoulder, like silent guardians carved in quiet prayer. Each one is draped in a bright red bib, tied carefully and neatly at the neck, their color vibrant against the weathered stone. You know what this place is. You have arrived at the home of the infant spirits. They are called Mizuko. Water children. A phrase soft enough to carry deep grief without shattering under its weight. A word whispered instead of shouted, spoken in hushed tones so as not to disturb the delicate sorrow it holds. These are the children who were never born. Pregnancies that ended before their first breath. Lives that never had the chance to begin. The phrase flows gently, like the water it invokes, but the pain beneath it is sharp and raw. And here, in this small, shaded clearing behind a neglected temple, women come when the burden of memory becomes too heavy to bear alone. The first offering you see is a pinwheel. Made from red paper, faded and spotted from rain, its curled edges still catching the faintest breeze. It spins slowly, lazily, as if trying to recall what it once was before the years dulled its brightness. Beside it rests a sandal carved delicately from pine, no longer than your thumb. And then, tucked carefully inside a small silk pouch left open to the wind, lies a single coin and a scrap of paper folded 3 times. The ink has blurred from moisture, but you can still make out the words, "Forgive me. I was only a girl." These are not graves. They are apologies shaped into offerings. They are confessions left without the need for reply. The statues here are all Jizo. Guardians of children. Small stone figures with soft, rounded faces and faint smiles delicately carved into their cheeks. They wear knitted caps and hand-stitched bibs, some tied fresh and bright, others worn and fraying with age. Their expressions never change, no matter the season, no matter the weather. They do not blink, do not judge, and they do not leave. They remain exactly where they are, waiting silently through the years. You sit beside one of these statues now, watching as a woman kneels in front of it. She is older than most you have seen here. No powder dusts her face. No color stains her lips. Her ears are bare and free of ornament. She reaches quietly into her sleeve and produces a simple wooden hairpin. The kind worn when one no longer needs to impress anyone. It is smooth from use, undecorated and plain. She places it gently at the base of the statue, adjusts it once with care, then bows deeply until her forehead touches the cold stone ground. She says nothing. Her silence is precise and full of meaning. Her gesture speaks louder than any voice ever could. Scholars still debate the origins of these rites. Some claim that Mizuko ceremonies only took form in the 20th century, shaped by modern beliefs and new rituals. Others argue that these practices began long before that, growing quietly in secret, passed from woman to woman without official record. They were not found in sacred scriptures or official teachings, but in the ache left behind. Whatever the truth may be, the evidence is here. You see it. You feel it in the way the air thickens around the offerings. You feel it in the hollow ache that settles deep in your chest. A girl arrives just as the sky begins to pale with the first light of dawn. She looks no older than 16. moving quickly and glancing over her shoulder as she steps silently on the wet stones. She carries a small ribbon and a paper crane folded so tightly that the creases look like delicate veins. Her hands tremble as she kneels, places both items carefully at the feet of a Jizo statue, bows once, and disappears into the gray morning before the sun can rise. These visits are never scheduled. There is no priest here to lead prayers. No chants, no drums, no incense curling through the rafters. Only women arriving when they can. Women carrying memories too heavy to bear alone. Women seeking something they cannot put into words. You watch another girl strike a match and hold it carefully. Even though she does not light a candle. She watches the small flame tremble and flicker, then allows it to die slowly in the gentle morning breeze. A thin trail of smoke rises upward. She follows it with her eyes, lips pressed into a silent line. Perhaps it is a farewell. Perhaps it is a promise made only to herself, and it is not only courtesans who come here. You see maids, girls with their sleeves rolled to the elbow, servants with frayed hems and worn garments. One woman wears the formal kimono of a rice merchant's household. She does not remove her sandals, but bows deeply anyway. She places a pouch of sweets carefully at the base of a statue, straightens her shoulders, and leaves without speaking a word. The pain here is not exclusive to any class. It crosses boundaries of wealth and status, age and station. The grief is shared, even when the stories behind it differ. Some offerings are simple toys, a spinning top, chipped but polished smooth from years of play. A ball of red yarn, knotted carefully at one end. A child's flute carved from bamboo. Worn smooth from practice and handling, others come from the woman's own past, the lucky charm once carried in a pocket. A fragment of a sleeve from the night everything changed. One statue clutches a mirror, cracked down the middle but cleaned with great care, as if the spirit it represents might still long to see its own face. And always, there are the bibs. The color red is not chosen for beauty. It is meant for protection. In folk belief, red wards off evil spirits. The bibs are a gesture of care, clothing for those who never had the chance to be clothed. Mothers dressing their children not in silk or cotton, but in the only fabric they can offer, memory. You read a verse faintly carved into a wooden post near the edge of the path. The lines are short. The cuts in the wood are shallow. The writing delicate, but steady and certain. Little one, forgive the tide that carried you before the moon had turned. I will meet you again, where the water is still. You wonder who wrote it. You wonder how many times she has returned to trace the letters with her fingers. You wonder if she still waits. Then, just beside the base of another statue, you notice something small and unexpected. A pair of chopsticks. Child-sized and polished smooth. Laid side by side, tied at one end with a thin white thread. There is no note. No explanation. No name, only the symbol of a meal never shared. A life that never sat at the table. A gesture of care meant for a future that never arrived. Some women come only once. They leave their offering, bow, and vanish forever. Others return, again and again. Year after year. One statue is wrapped with 5 bibs, layered over one another like flower petals, soft and tender. At its base lies a single wooden plank. Carved into it is one character. Probably not a true name. Just a name she could speak. Just one word to hold all the things she could not say. And now you understand, this place is not built on guilt. It is built on remembrance. In a world where women were taught to forget, this is the one corner where memory is allowed to live. Not flaunted. Not praised. Simply allowed. No one scolds them here. No one asks for stories. No one demands explanations. The wind itself softens, rustling the leaves with gentle restraint, as if it knows the true weight of silence in this place. Before you leave, you reach out and rest your hand on one of the stone heads. It is smooth and cold beneath your palm. Rain has settled in the carved corners of its eyes. Or perhaps that is how it was made. You cannot tell, either way, you speak without thinking. Just a few words, barely more than breath, for the ones who stayed, for the ones who fled, for the ones who vanished, and for the ones who were never allowed to be. You return to Yoshiwara once more. But this time, something feels different. It is not quieter. It is not slower. Instead, it feels older. As if the entire district has begun to fray gently around the edges, like an ancient scroll left open too long in the harsh sunlight, the ink slowly lifting and fading from the paper, the corners curling upward with time and wear. The streets you once wandered remain where they always were, but their sharpness has dulled with age. The laughter still reaches your ears, but it sounds thinner now, stretched across rooms that feel just a little emptier than before. The colors still shimmer faintly in the twilight, but they look more like fragile reflections than bold pigments painted on silk. And perhaps that is because the girls who once filled those streets have changed. Or perhaps it is because you yourself have changed. Either way, something has shifted in the air. And once you begin to notice it, you start to see the echoes of what once was. They appear in small gestures that have outlived their original purpose. A flick of a sleeve meant to catch the eye of a passing patron. A smile that lands with perfect timing, carefully measured and placed. A laugh that is not born from joy, but from precision and discipline. These are not accidents or unconscious habits. They are techniques. Survival tricks that have been honed over generations. You begin to recognize these same movements not only in the alleys of old Yoshiwara, but also in a different world altogether. Even now, in modern Japan, these gestures still remain. They live on in hostess clubs lined with velvet chairs and polished glasses. They move through karaoke lounges tucked away in dark basement floors. They appear in VIP rooms perched atop high-rise towers of neon and glass. The courtesans themselves are gone, but their rituals have not disappeared. They have only changed their uniforms. You are standing in one of those clubs now. It is 11:47 p.m. The air smells faintly of citrus and perfume, a mixture designed to delight and soothe. The lighting is golden, filtered through crystal chandeliers and deliberate lamps, casting soft glows that flatter and conceal at the same time. Everything feels expensive, carefully arranged to create an atmosphere of luxury and exclusivity. A hostess leans forward toward a businessman who is swirling his third whiskey in a heavy-bottomed glass. She tilts her head just slightly. Her eyes narrow at the corners in a way that suggests intimacy and interest, but not invitation. She laughs softly, her voice perfectly measured, the sound timed like a note in a practiced melody. She adjusts her dress. Not because it has slipped, but because the rhythm of the night demands it. The movement is smooth and deliberate. Rehearsed. She glances quickly behind the man, toward the other women seated at the table. There is a nod, almost imperceptible. A subtle shift in posture. Coordination without words. A hierarchy maintained without noise. It is not Yoshiwara as it once was. But it might as well be, because even though the brothels have long been dismantled and the paper contracts buried deep in dusty archives, the expectations remain. They are no longer written on scrolls or signed with seals. Instead, they are encoded in tone of voice, in schedules, in quotas met or missed. The message is the same as it ever was. Be charming. Be desirable. Be the dream. But never cross the line. Never become real. Never get pregnant. Hostess bars today do not require contracts promising chastity. But pregnancy remains a kind of betrayal. It is a danger to the illusion. A crack in the polished mirror. A reminder that the woman is not just a character to be admired, not just a product to be consumed, but a human being with a life beyond the role. You overhear a manager speaking softly to a new girl near the dressing room door. His tone is almost kind, the words gentle on the surface, but the meaning sharp underneath. If something happens, handle it quietly, he says. His smile does not quite reach his eyes. The same conversation has played out in many different eras, each one wearing different clothing but speaking the same unchanging message. Historians have traced the thread connecting the women of Edo's pleasure quarters and the hostesses of today. It is not a lineage of blood, but one of training, of emotion, of negotiation. The techniques are passed down like recipes, taught quietly in dim rooms hidden behind thick curtains. Both then and now, women learn how to offer presents without possession. They learn how to sell affection without surrender. They learn how to vanish behind the role they play while still remaining visible enough to keep the customers coming back. In some clubs, older women become mentors to the younger girls. They teach more than charm. They teach strategy. They teach how to survive not only the night, but the next night, and the night after that. Their lessons are never written down, but they are memorized and passed along carefully. Know his drink before he sits down. Don't mention politics or illness. If you're late, blame family. And if you're pregnant, never let it show. The tools may have changed with time. Now there are pills tucked into purse linings. Phone apps quietly tracking each day of the cycle. Discreet clinics with side entrances. But the fear remains. The stakes remain. One woman tells her story during a rooftop break, her voice low and tired, smoke curling slowly from the cigarette held between her fingers. He was nice, she says. Said I was different. Said he meant it. She flicks the ash into the wind. When I told him, he disappeared. Blocked everything. Sent money, though. Just enough for one visit. One cab ride. It sounds familiar. You think of the girl who wore her sash high to hide the change. The one who burned the letters that once made her smile. The one who knelt before the shrine, begging for mercy without words. Their silhouettes stretch across time, overlapping with the women around you now. They wear cocktail dresses instead of kimono. Their lipstick is a different shade. But their rhythm, their movement, is exactly the same. Some things do not vanish. They only adapt. You hear about a club in Osaka, elegant and discreet, where the girls are allowed 3 weeks off if something happens. It is not written down anywhere. It is not official. But everyone understands. There are no names recorded. No apologies required. When they return, no one speaks of it. In return, they are expected to be silent. They are expected to be grateful. In Tokyo, one woman known only as Mickey has created something quieter. An underground group chat, passed along through whispers and secret messages. It is not advertised. It is not searchable. It is a place for women who need to speak without fear of being overheard in the wrong places. A space to cry, to ask questions, to scream into a screen before putting on mascara and a practiced smile again. A digital shrine built from shared pain and mutual understanding. You visit a clinic near Shibuya, hidden behind a drugstore with a faded awning. It is small and quiet. The nurse does not ask for your real name. The appointments always run late. The air smells of rubbing alcohol, lavender spray, and something older and more familiar than either. The receptionist never wears lipstick. Her voice is calm and even. Her hands are steady and sure. On a shelf above the coat rack, you notice something that does not belong. A red paper crane, folded with care. A child's bib, too small to fit any living baby. And hanging from a brass hook beside the light switch, a Jizo charm swings gently on a red cord. It turns slowly, catching the overhead light as it moves. You wonder who left it there. You wonder how many others have noticed. Even here, the old world still breathes. The courtesans never truly disappeared. They changed their names. They changed their settings. They changed the language they used. But they are still here. Some call themselves companions. Some say they are entertainers. Some say nothing at all. They live in the space between presence and performance. Between being adored and being forgotten. They learn to carry longing in one hand and denial in the other. They learn to hide anything that might remind the world they are human. One woman tells you quietly, "If I ever have a child, it will not be from this life. It will be after. After the makeup is off. After the music has stopped. After the pretending ends. Only then will I be allowed to be real." Until that time, she carries something in her purse. A small pouch, stitched from silk, embroidered with cranes in silver thread. Inside lies a wooden rattle. She does not show it to anyone. But when she touches it, her fingers linger for a moment. "Just in case," she says softly. "For someday." You leave the club sometime after 2 in the morning. The night has softened around you. The rain has returned, light and fine, falling gently like a veil. The streets glisten beneath the city's endless sea of light. Tokyo glows in every direction, and the reflections stretch across the pavement like the shine once seen on lacquered floors. You pause for a moment in the quiet street. You understand something now: the cities have changed. The language has changed too. But the women are still dancing the same dance, only the shoes are different. You walk the streets of Yoshiwara one last time. Not because the district still stands intact or bustling with life, but because something of it remains hidden beneath the modern city's surface. Its shape lingers quietly in the very bones of the city, like a bruise beneath the skin, faint, but tender to the touch if you know where to look. Where the great gates once opened wide with ceremony and clamor, marking the boundary between worlds, there is now a pedestrian overpass. Cars glide smoothly over it, oblivious to the ghosts that hover just beneath their wheels, shadows of lives once lived. Where the grandest tea houses once welcomed nobles stepping down from lacquered carriages under gilded umbrellas. There is now a dimly lit parking garage, flickering with the harsh glow of aging fluorescent bulbs. But if you close your eyes, if you pause and breathe just right, neither too fast nor too shallow, you can still feel it. The past rustles at the edges like wind through tall reeds, soft and persistent. It is all still there. You drift like smoke between centuries. Between echoes that call out faintly, between names remembered and names erased, between choices that never really felt like choices at all. The air carries fragments of stories both spoken and silenced, drifting through time like leaves caught in a slow current, and then it settles on you, quiet and complete. This story was never only about courtesans and their bodies. Not truly. It was about something far deeper. About survival. About the thousand small, deliberate, unspoken ways a woman learns to stay alive. To remain present. In a world that punishes her simply for trying to live on her own terms, she learns to exist in the margins, to bend without breaking. She learns to smile even as she clenches her jaw against pain. You remember the bitter teas, their scent sharp and unkind, lingering in the corners of dim rooms. The belly binders pulled tight each morning, tightened even more at night to hold everything in place. The rituals, endless and repetitive, performed beneath the dim glow of a single paper lantern, flickering behind a shoji screen that never quite blocked the cold that seeped in. You remember the blood, sometimes real, sometimes faked with ink or dye to mask wounds no one was allowed to see. You remember the laughter, sometimes sincere, sometimes sliced from pain and reshaped into something more palatable, a fragile mask for survival. You remember the whispered prayers. Prayers to stay invisible. To stay needed. To stay, in any way that mattered. You remember the smoke-filled room of Obasan, where girls came not to be saved, but simply to be spared. You remember the tiny shrine tucked in shadow, with its row of little red bibs, each one tied by hands trembling with memory and regret. You remember the girl who fled into the night. The girl who burned the only letters that ever called her by her real name. The girl who gave up her voice and, with it, her past, and most of all, you remember the silence, not the silence of peace. Not the hush of a still pond or the quiet comfort of a futon at the end of a long day. No. This was the silence of endurance. The silence of bearing what must not be said aloud. The silence of waiting, of watching, of swallowing every scream while the body trembles with the truth it cannot speak. Historians may argue about the facts. They often do. Some will insist these women had more control than they are given credit for, pointing to examples of rebellion, cleverness, and agency carved out within impossible constraints. Others will hold up the documents, the contracts, the punishments, and say there was no choice at all. That they were bound from the very start. That everything was decided for them. Both arguments are probably correct. And both are probably wrong, because this was never a world of certainties. It was a world built from shadow and negotiation. From soft edges and sharp consequences. From the quiet calculations made in the space between a client's breath and a madam's gaze. It was not made for simple truths. And shadows, as always, tell only part of the story. You walk the old streets one final time. Slower now. More present. The ghosts here do not frighten you. They do not wail or rattle chains. They do not call out or pull at your sleeves. They only watch, from doorways and windows that no longer exist. They carry no malice. Only memory. They recognize you. You have walked beside them all night. Listening, you turn a corner where a brothel once stood. For a moment, you could swear you see a flicker of silk trailing softly into the narrow alley. You hear a low laugh, half familiar, a whisper rising like steam. But when you look again, it is gone. Only an empty storefront remains, dark and shuttered for the night. The sky begins to lighten. The edge of dawn creeps slowly into the horizon. The city stirs in its half-sleep. The first train will run soon. Tires will roll along wet streets. Shops will open their doors. And the world will resume its endless turning. You stop at a narrow bridge, quiet and plain. It is the very same one the girl once crossed beneath a moonless sky. Clutching her precious bundle close to her chest. You look down at the water below. It moves gently, barely disturbed, as if it too remembers everything you now carry. As if it, too, has been listening all along. The truth is, you are not only leaving Yoshiwara. You are leaving behind a story without a clear ending. Because women like these never vanish completely. They recede. They shift. They reshape themselves. They wait. Then they return, dressed in different clothes, with different voices, walking into familiar patterns with new names. They face the same questions, find the same cracks, summon the same strength. Perhaps that is why you came here. Not to study. Not to analyze. But to witness. To say quietly, yes, I see you. I remember. I will carry this, so if your eyes feel heavy now, if your breath deepens, if your pulse slows in time with the imagined footsteps of the women who walked this path before you, then let that happen. Let it stay with you. Let the silence finally become the kind that brings rest. Let the lights grow dim. Let the past fold gently into the dark. Let sleep come, soft and sure. You have walked a long and winding road tonight, through candlelit brothels where the air once shimmered with perfume and performance. Through smoke-choked rooms where truth was bartered quietly, wrapped in shadows. Through whispered prayers beneath rooftops too thin to keep out the wind. Through the 1,000 different ways a woman can learn to survive, and now, you are here, safe. Still. Far from the clinking of coins and the rustle of silk that once meant obligation. The music has faded away. The doors are shut tight. The eyes are closed softly. The performance is over. And what remains is breath, so take one now. Let it in slow and kind. Let it settle somewhere low in your chest, warm and steady. Let the night wrap around you like a soft robe no one will ever ask you to remove. There is no need to bind yourself tonight. No need to pose or pretend. No one is watching. No one is weighing your worth. You are allowed to rest. Whatever noise came before, let it float away on the wind. Whatever sorrow followed you here, let it lie down and sleep. You did not run. You did not disappear. You remained, you witnessed, and now, you may let go. The past will tend to its own keeping. The future can wait a little longer. The present moment, here and now, is soft. Steady. Yours, so close your eyes, let the incense in your mind fade away, let your heartbeat slow to the rhythm of breath and belonging. You are safe, you are still, you are home.